completely lose your fucking mind.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first official Say Report Halloween episode. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, the other host and my companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan.
I really do love the energy that you're bringing, but do you want to take another go at that and make it spooky? I mean, like, it's,
No.
it's a little bit of a weird introduction.
No, here's the thing, man. We've lived through a pandemic. There ain't nothing spooky about Halloween anymore. You know, and wow, is that what happened in the world?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. There's still plenty of things with like Halloween, and there's still plenty of other things that could be spooky and scary.
Not to me. Yeah, I was already a skeptic. I ruined the ghost tour in New Orleans, and now I'm here, and I'm just like, let me tell you, I'm walking through a cemetery, right? This is not happening. This is a hypothetical. Hypothetically, I'm walking through a cemetery, and up from the grave comes a ghost or a zombie or a skeleton. I'm gonna be like, hey, what's up? I'm not gonna be afraid. I've had so many more scary things out there, like the fact that Elon Musk owns Twitter.
It may be, but like,
I'm not spooked by spooky season. There's the fact.
But like the implications of a being rising from the earth that should be dead does not scare you at all. Like what?
I think somebody is a little. That's rude, right? We're assuming its status. It should be dead. If it can rise from its grave, Sejan, maybe it should be alive.
I don't know what that means, Devin. You're saying things like you're being accusatory, and I don't quite understand what you could possibly be accusing somebody of being freaked out by.
I don't know. I'm really just kind of yes-anding the energy you gave me about, do you want to be spooky to open this episode? No, I want to be excited because it's our first official Halloween episode.
I see. You don't understand that yes and actually means you say the words yes and, not no but, which is exactly what you just admitted to.
Was I no butting there? I don't know.
You just said I'm yes and you by no saying it. It's like what?
What? No, I'm yes anding that you brought to me. Oh, you want to do spooky? And it's like, no, I don't really believe in spooky. Do I not believe in spooky anymore?
Oh my god.
Oh, I get it, because I'm saying no there. I thought that the premise of the scene was that I don't know what spooky is. But then, like, what I've realized, as in most character work, is my actual thoughts and feelings about spookiness without, it's all right. Not really. I'm disappointed. We're starting off with something where I'm disappointed.
Surprise, surprise. Let's go. What do you got?
I'm mad at McDonald's, to be completely honest with you. I gotta rip it off my chest and throw it onto the chest of the listeners. Mostly onto the chest of you. On my tits. Sorry. I'm so sorry. So the Halloween pails, right? Are you familiar with this? Have you heard about this?
Yeah, Jay.
No.
Your Leno needs a little bit of work, but yeah, I'm there. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm not going out trick or treating. I didn't go to any Halloween parties. You're getting all the costumes in the vocal work today, and sometimes the costume's not that great. So, but so they brought back, for nostalgia purposes, the Halloween buckets as the Happy Meal repository. The way they're giving you the Happy Meal. And I don't know if you remember these from when we were younger. These Halloween buckets that McDonald's.
Yeah. At Halloween, you could get a Happy Meal and then you'd get yourself a trick or treat bucket you go out with. Yeah. And it was a pretty lame sized trick or treat bucket by all accounts, but give me a good old pillowcase anytime.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously we all freaking moneyballed Halloween and found out how to get the most candy, thus ruining trick-or-treating for everybody. But yeah, it was a fun thing to do, right? It was nice that rather than like a Garfield that doesn't look like Garfield, and then like if you push down the suction cup it'll jump up, and it's like, when was Garfield ever jumping as your toy? You got something that had some practical use, right?
Right. Yes.
And they're iconic to me. They're as iconic as the McNuggets in Halloween costumes. I feel like such a fucking shill in this whole segment. But yeah, so they brought them back, and the day that they were coming back was the 18th of October. That was when they were emerging onto the world again. And I went early in the morning to see if I could get the buckets, right? And I figured, oh, I'll get some sausage McMuffins. And they're like, oh, we're not doing them till lunchtime. And it's like, oh, okay, that'd be cool on all this marketing stuff of like coming back October 18th, starting at lunchtime.
Well, I mean, they're with a Happy Meal, right? Is it that you can't get? Are there no breakfast Happy Meals? I guess I never thought
So
about
there
that.
used to be breakfast Happy Meals. They don't exist anymore.
Oh,
But also, so like that's the thing. There was a time where you do it, but also there was a time when McDonald's food was, we realized, oh, this is really bad for us, right? Turns out that eating pencil shavings and horse hooves ground into a fine patty, that's not true. I mean, I'm sure they use some sort of like food in there, but eating McDonald's foods, which are mostly grease, fat, and sugar, is not good for you. So what they
like a
allowed you
grease
to
salt.
do, what they would allow you to do is just buy the Happy Meal toy, right? But in this new world where McDonald's is all about selling you nostalgia, right? That's the only reason you bring back the Halloween buckets. You can't just buy the toy. You have to buy the food too. I guess because otherwise, like, what's stopping somebody from going in there and being like, I'll take 50 Halloween buckets, please?
Well, yeah. I mean, the bigger thing is that there was what you're really skipping over is the collector bullshit that happened at the end of the 90s, where there was so many different McDonald's exclusive toys for movies and television shows and all that sort of stuff, and people got obnoxious. They would go in and they would buy up five, Happy Meals just to see what they got. And they'd sit there and ask that the person look through the box to like get specific toys, like, which really kind of kills the whole what's the word I'm looking for, like the manufacturing line of the McDonald's like oeuvre, where they're just supposed to literally just reach under the desk, throw a toy in, move on, reach under the desk, grab a toy, throw it in, move on, right? Like they can't do that if they have to then sift through all of the friggin' like Ice Age toys to make sure that they find the ugly baby one that's buried at the bottom. Because that's the other thing, is that there's always been that idea that they manufacture more than others. This is just like regular toy
Yeah.
marketing, right? But
There's a
it's almost
short
like
packed McDonald's toy, which is just
exactly right,
ridiculous. Yeah.
right. And so and the reason that they did that is that kids would be like, I want to collect them all, and not just kids, people in general, we found out, would be like, I want to collect them all, so they'd keep coming back, keep buying Happy Meals, hoping they'd get that toy, and their odds were not greatly in their favor. Yeah, but that happened. Like McDonald's started having some real issues with collectors that would show up and try and do exactly what you're saying, of like try and grab as many as they can, and they would ask people to look for stuff. They'd start like camping out McDonald's for certain things, and like this sounds ridiculous because it's only a little over the top, but if you consider everything that happened with Szechuan sauce, you know exactly what I'm referring to, right? And that was something that only happened 5 years ago.
Yeah. What the thing is that even up until the reason when it came to the peak and it came to you have to buy the Happy Meal is the Pokemon cards. When Pokemon cards were the toy, this is the big time that it
when they
happened.
when they came in like the Pokeball and they were like the gold plated ones that they had.
No. The gold plated ones were, first of all, they were Burger King, and you had to
Oh
pay
yeah,
extra
yeah.
money for those, right? Like it's like the Batman glasses you used to be able to get at McDonald's. Which that's a whole other discussion, and we'll bring it up. No, McDonald's did Pokemon cards. I want to say 2019. It was pre-pandemic. That's all I can tell you. And what it was in the Happy Meal, you would get a Pokemon card, and because those Pokemon cards are only limited to McDonald's, they already had a like inferred rarity to them, like not
Right.
so much a shiny, but the fact that like, oh, if you don't go to McDonald's and get these cards, you're not going to do them. And
I
then
mean, they were pretty shiny from all the grease on them.
right, no, I was talking in Pokemon terms, like where you have a Pokemon and then you have a shiny Pokemon, which is a 1 in 255 chance of finding that. Right.
Snorlax burger. Yeah, yeah. Sorry,
Okay,
keep
it's fine,
going.
it's fine. And with that promotion, because the people, like the collectors, were up early and just bought McDonald's out of their stock, because like it's not like plastic that you're getting; it's literally just a card, right? Or like a
Yeah.
booster pack of cards. So the people who understand the value of Pokemon cards, which I cannot claim to be, go to McDonald's knowing that there's going to be a market for these, especially an aftermarket for these. So if they can collect them all because they were up when the McDonald's opened at 5 a.m., all more power to them. And kind of all more power to McDonald's being like, well, we want to make sure that kids get these things, so we're not going to let adults just come in and buy everything.
Right.
And again, if they had said with Happy Meals or beginning lunchtime on the date, I would have understood that. But the way that it is, I mean, we lived through the Batman Forever glasses. We lived through the 100 years of Walt Disney World glasses, which that was weird too, because that hasn't been there for 100 years, has it? I think
Disney
it was
itself,
100
like
years.
Disney the parks,
Disney,
no, but
yeah.
Disney creating, yes.
Yeah.
Like,
So yeah, it was like, that was a weird one. But they were the square glasses, and each of them represented a park, and those were like an extra cost. And honestly, that's what I thought they were going to do with these Halloween buckets, especially along the lines of like the Cactus Plant adult Happy Meals that came along. It felt like they realized, oh, we have these collectors, let's appeal to the collectors again. Because
right.
like, kids don't give a shit about these Halloween pails, right?
No, like I said, we didn't when we were kids. We like they were cool to get, but I didn't never used mine to actually go out and do. Mine held a bunch of Playmobiles and Legos for years. Like
Yeah.
that's like yeah, I don't think kids really. I mean that's the secret of all of this collecting stuff. At the end of the day, though, is that like kids care to a point in that if everybody else has one, they want one too, right? But when it comes down to the fact of like, are they going to then utilize it or like take care of it or any of that? No, famously no. Like there's like that's why dads out there everywhere will buy GI Joes and then keep them in a box somewhere where the kids don't know where they are, so they don't blow them up with a with a cherry bomb outside, yeah. Right? Like yeah, like there famously kids don't really care about collectibles once the thing is in their possession. No,
right. I mean that's what I'm dealing with too, but that's not for this episode. We're talking about Halloween, and we're starting with the Halloween pails at McDonald's. So I go later that day to get dinner, and I buy.
Mine glow in the dark. Do they glow in the dark still? That's the big thing I remember.
Anymore. They've actually chinsed out on them. You thought that they were small before. They have an even smaller like diameter as a pail, and they're not as deep. But yeah, so I'm like, okay, the only way to get them is to order a Happy Meal. So I ordered 4 Happy Meals because everyone in the family like is going to want one. I know that. My mom's going to want one for everyone in the family so she can do her photos. That's the other thing is like my mother was away, right? She was traveling. So she's like, I would like you to try to get the buckets for me. And I'm like, okay. And because I wasn't doing fast food, right? It was just this idea of like, I'll get these buckets for my mother and that'll be nice, right? She asked for it. Her birthday is right after Halloween. It all kind of works together, right? Hopefully. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anywho, coming down the line, I talked to them and they're like, all right, so we have the ghosts now. We're going to have the pumpkins on Sunday. And then they never mentioned the goblin, which is what it's called now, but it was always a witch. It always kind of looked like a witch before. Mm-hmm. They didn't say that, but the fact that the next one comes on Sunday, it makes it sound like that's how it's going to run, right? On Sunday, we're going to have the new ones. And it's 3 weeks, 3 pails. So last Sunday, I was busy helping out some friends, and Dale had to go get them, and she was able to get 4 pumpkins. So, like, we have 4 ghosts, we have 4 pumpkins, and she's like, when are you guys going to have the witch? And they're like, well, we should get another shipment next Sunday. So that's what we were banking on, right? That next Sunday is this Sunday where we're recording this. And we called around, and everybody's like, oh, no, we're done with the pails. We don't have that one. So, like, either they got them in the middle of the week, or I don't know what's happening. But they're starting a Black Panther Wakanda Forever thing tomorrow on Halloween. And I don't understand it. I'm just a little disappointed. But mostly I'm disappointed because the green pail was always my favorite pail. So I have 4 of the lame ghost and pumpkin and none of the goblin. And like already on eBay, because I was like just trying to see if I could like find pictures of them actually being given away at McDonald's. And of course, because we live in a consumer-centric society, the first thing that I see on eBay is the new ghost pail, the new witch pail, Mick Goblin. So I guess it's a goblin, but it looks like a witch. It always has. Is going for $13.99, which is a 400% price markup.
Wow,
So
man. Whoa. Yeah, man, I gotta be I was right there with you as far as the Halloween kind of closing up shop early thing because like so this past week was my birthday and like
happy
and that's
birthday.
always the case, but that's always the case with Halloween, right? Is I always have kind of my birthday falling around Halloween, and there's this idea that I like to try and keep them separate. Like I'm not a big fan of the whole like even like people who's like my birthday is on Christmas. I'm like, well, we'll make sure to do something for your birthday first, then we'll talk about Christmas because that's it's important to keep the two separate, right? So with that in mind, like I wasn't really paying too much attention to Halloween this year. I guess I paid more attention in the past and maybe done like my costume earlier in the month and then just packed it away. But no, I put it off, and like that is my own fault, I guess, because lo and behold, went out like shopping for a Halloween costume this weekend, thinking, oh, it's the weekend before Halloween. There'll be a bunch of good stuff. It'll probably be pricey, and they'll gouge me for it. But that's my own fault for waiting. But I'm fine with that. No, we've moved on. We're already selling Christmas stuff. We already have Valentine stuff in a couple of the stores I
Yeah.
went into. Like some of the craftier stores where like we're already gearing up for the season after because makers have to get on their shit ASAP. But like the idea being that Halloween costumes have just not been available for like a week now, like everywhere, is just nuts to me. And that includes like Walmart and Target and stuff. And like I know this is like the holiday creep is something we've all joked about for like years, but we're creeping so far away now that holidays are being like thrown out the door a week before they even happen. What is happening?
Yeah, Zach from Board with Friends, he had actually gotten back to me last Sunday because we've been playing the new Ghostbusters game, Spirits Unleashed, which is fantastic, and I hope that we get to talk about it on the show at some point. And he contacted me on Sunday saying, I'm at Target and they have all the Halloween stuff at 40% off right now, and you can get a Ghostbuster ghost trap that like looks authentic. It's $5. Do you want me to grab you one? And I'm like, I'm good. I appreciate it. Thank you. Because I'd seen them and they look good, but they're cheap. And I know in like this house is going to get crushed under something else. Probably me. Like I'm going to step on it accidentally.
Yeah,
Right?
I know, I get what you
Like,
mean though.
it's just
Like
like,
it looks good quality, but you've hit a point where you're just like, if I'm not going to care enough about this thing that I'm going to make sure it has a nice place to live, then no, I don't need this in the
yeah,
house. I don't
exactly.
need that future sadness.
Yeah. So what are you going to do? So I shut him down. But it seems so strange to me to think that like 40% off, Halloween is 8 days away.
I
Like,
know, I know.
what do you
I
like?
just like, what is where's the market for the last minute shopper? I like, do we just not care anymore? I don't know, man. Part of
Well,
me wonders
what
if the
they're
pandemic.
oh, continue because this
No,
seems
a
good.
part of me wonders if the pandemic kind of just like kind of pushed like retail like in some really obnoxious directions that it was already going, right? But like boosted it like hardcore, right? Because one of the big things is I know that they're trying to get Christmas out ASAP because we have never had a good Christmas in terms of on the capitalist side of things in this country, we have not had a good Christmas for 5 years, right? Like things have been going fucking downhill in terms of like shopping and spending money and keeping like businesses open and afloat and stuff. And there were a lot of businesses that long before the pandemic had to their like this is their own damn fault, but like they were kind of dependent on that Christmas push to kind of justify some stuff the rest of the year. Let's put it that way. That's a nice way of saying that a lot of businesses were kind of riding their coattails of Christmas throughout the year to survive. And like that's not how a business should be run, right? Like
I
you
mean,
shouldn't be dependent on one holiday.
you
But
say that, but the whole argument is we're in the red until Black Friday when
right.
everything when suddenly we're turning a profit.
That's
So
not an argument. That's
yeah,
what I'm pointing out is that's bad business
no,
practice.
right,
Like the
but
fact that
that's
we have created an entire structure dependent on that kind of thing, and then suddenly this life event comes in that stops people from being able to spend money, and the entire economy is screwed. Maybe we should rethink that. But no, we didn't do that during the pandemic. Much like everything else, we didn't actually sit back and reconfigure and decide to do things differently. Instead, we're now just punishing everybody by like moving through holidays at a light speed. We're gonna end up with a year with two Halloweens and two Christmases. Like I guarantee you, by like 2025, you're going to see that Christmas comes twice a year.
I mean, you say that, and I don't doubt that a thing like that could happen. The timeline, right, of 3 years. You're saying that in 3 years' time, that's what's going to happen to our calendar. I'll
We
take that bet, man. But
we
like,
already celebrate Christmas in July sales. Like it's already a thing that happens. The only difference is we don't have like a public push for it. But just wait, there's going to be people that are going to suddenly start saying, "I'm taking some vacation in the June July time because it's halfway through the year. There's not really much going on. Also, there's a whole bunch of Christmas and June sales going on. Wouldn't it be funny if we put a Christmas tree up and all it's going to take is just one influencer? It's going to take one influencer to push this. Like Mr. Beast just on a fucking whim is just like, I'm going to give a bunch of money away to homeless people today and also buy everybody Christmas trees because it's fucking June. Let's do it." And then the next thing you know, every kid out there is celebrating Christmas in June for the rest of their lives.
wow, yeah, that's dark and probably what's going to happen, especially when you consider, and this has always stuck with me, spending tins in The Simpsons in the Trash of the Titans episode opens up with, then we have our mom dad grad gift corridor, then we have the usual summer lull, which is July, August, September. But hey, we're making enough money anyway, and that guy gets thrown out of a window, and that's why they invent Love Day, which kicks off the events of Trash of the Titans. And yeah, no, like the summer has always not been great for shopping places, like stores. Stores is the word I'm looking for. So that's not surprising. What I'd like to do, and there's really no way to do this, right? Because we weren't around. There's a reason why this is our first Halloween episode, and that's because we release on Mondays. This is the first Monday Halloween in the past 6 years that we've been doing the show. So I doubt we have the data because we weren't really looking at it. I wonder if the problem is that Halloween is on that Monday, right?
Yeah.
So like we've already kicked off the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter has been kicked off, right? So like shipping wise, you're going to start getting your Thanksgiving and your Christmas stuff that first week in November. So is it like even worth it to them to like hold over for just that one Monday? I also think, and this is actually based on some anecdotal evidence, the big fucking skeleton. Like, are you aware of the big skeleton? I imagine there were
that
just...
everybody and their fucking mother had to have a big skeleton on their yard this year. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, there's the 8 foot and then the 12 foot tall.
Right.
And the
that it's
problem,
like $150 if you get like a halfway decent one.
well, it's $300 is the 12
for the nice
12-foot one,
yes.
like the really really nice one.
Yeah.
But Home Depot had the 8 foot one, right? Because what we're going to see now going forward, right, from like an analysis standpoint, is bigger and bigger skeletons for the lawn. Because the initial one was Home Depot with the 8 foot one, but they didn't sell. And the reason that they didn't sell was primarily the pandemic, right? People weren't going to Home Depot to buy this skeleton. So then they clearanced them out at 70% off that the first day of November, right? November 1st. And that's when everybody bought those skeletons. And then because there was this rush on skeletons after the fact, everybody knew about them. I mean, it was kind of the best marketing that they could have gotten, because it was like, wow, I didn't know that Home Depot sold these types of things. And what an amazing product for, like, I think you could get them for $30. Like, it was an absurd cost for them to like, because they were just being clearanced out. And then when I saw this year, right, because everybody now, like, everybody will either buy them or they have them, or, well, I'm going to wait until after Halloween to try to pick one up at that amazing discount again, right? Everybody put their skeletons on half off sale on the 21st of October. Like, it was just this crazy thing. I just had a bunch of updates that, like, the giant skeletons are half off today. And all of these places sold out of their stock at half off the price. Where, like, they would have had to hold on to them until after November if they were going to go even drastic or even drasticer. Screw me. With the discounts on these products that, like, take up a lot of floor space, right? And also, a 0.5% loss is way more than like 70%, right? Like, it's just about making money. And I don't even know how much those skeletons cost, to just be completely honest about the entire thing. So who knows how much they're actually making on them. But yeah, they sold out of their stock pre-Halloween by like just sort of flash sailing them for 50% off.
Yeah, and
And
then they don't
like,
have to pay to store them and all that
yeah,
shit. Like, yeah, no, it's all about making money and it's all about business and all that. And I get why, like, the holidays are moving and fast forward. It's just it's a bad sign because, like you're saying about wanting to just like go to fucking McDonald's and celebrate Halloween. Like, it's October 30th today. I should be able to still do Halloweeny stuff if I want to.
I mean, let's talk about the fact that the witch buckets were probably going to sell out in 2 days, like they did on all the other days, right? You'd still be out of stock by the start of November. But then also, don't do it as a Happy Meal toy. Do it as a secondary like promotion.
Yeah, I
Don't
don't
link
know,
the
man.
two.
There's something about the idea though that like the more exclusive you can make it seem, the better. And there's nothing better than as like be telling a bunch of adults like, oh, these are meant for kids. You're not gonna want these. You know how fast that shit sells.
True. I don't know. I guess, and the other thing I don't love it, the fact that you have to buy the Happy Meal in order to get the toy, because then you see these photos online of just all the food thrown away.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Right.
like,
You see in the background, they've got like five different buckets on the table, and behind them is just like dozens of nuggets just thrown in the trash. Yeah.
yeah, it's just, it's sad. I don't know. But I don't know what the actual solution is, right? But we're wasting food. And even if we're wasting McDonald's grade food, that's still disgusting considering what's going on in other parts of the world right now.
Well, I mean, not to mention the idea being that yeah, if we're to take McDonald's at their word, which I'm not saying that we have to all the time, but just for the sake of the conversation, right? But if you take McDonald's at the word that these are meant to be with like Happy Meals for kids, right? That guy that's selling them on eBay probably doesn't have kids at home, or if he does, he didn't need five buckets for them that he's now selling. That's why he's able to sell them. So there's also that idea of just like the whole point of this thing has gone so out the window that like McDonald's can't really be faulted as the bad guy here when we're not taking it out of children's hands, right? Like
Right. That's true.
by it not existing, it's not McDonald's letting down a bunch of kids at this point. Like we're two 35-year-old men sitting here complaining about it.
That's a good point. I don't know, but I feel like it encourages that the food, because before it was the same price as a Happy Meal to just get the toy, which seemed like a pretty solid like trade off for it, because then all the value is the toy, and that's
Yeah,
fine
no,
because
right, right.
that's
The
where
idea
the
that they're
value
tacking
is
on
at.
extra to yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird, and that's why I was kind of in a weird mood this morning, because I don't freaking know. But yeah, so I think any other negative things to say about Halloween and all this stuff before we get like actually celebrate.
No, I mean the big thing is like I'm happy that we're able to do this today, and this is what I really wanted to start off with because things were not so Halloweeny everywhere else, right? Like the fact that everything else has moved on with Halloween is it's just great that we get to sit here and record a Halloween episode, and it seems like the rest of the world has already moved on from the spooky season, and we're already doing. I mean, like fuck Thanksgiving. I haven't seen shit at all about Thanksgiving. It's all Christmas now, so I guess we've just completely given up on the idea that we're all going to see each other for Thanksgiving this year.
I mean, even if we all see each other for Thanksgiving this year, it's always kind of been Christmas, like pre-Christmas, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Like it.
Yeah, well, Christmas part one, right?
Yeah. It's like the Harry Potter movies, or really any YA novel that has a last book. We gotta cut it into two things, and between them, Thanksgiving. No, that's more
Oh man.
Grindhouse. But yeah, I don't know. It is very strange. You bring up a good point, because everybody was calling it like there were a bunch of photos of New York City on Halloween night just being traded around on socials last night, and I'm like, Halloween night is Monday. I
Yeah.
know that it's the Saturday and this is when you're celebrating, but like it's not Halloween night.
Yeah, that's the other thing with it being on this weird Monday, right? Is that there's also been a lot of stuff in all communities like talking about the idea of like, yeah, but we're not really going to do it on Monday, right? Like we're probably going to do it Saturday, right? Right? And like the online push to like not make Halloween the last day of the month, the year, but the last weekend and stuff like that that comes up every year and it's like, guys, it is based on an actual date. Like we can't just move it.
Yeah.
But what you mean is you want to celebrate early. Feel free to.
Right,
Nobody's stopping
but
you.
it doesn't change the fact that Halloween is October 31st to coincide with Samhain. That's
Yeah, right.
that's what it's about.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's not. It's strange. It's just really strange. It's like I've kind of the bloom has gone off of Halloween for me. Like, oh, I said we were gonna get happy, but I do want to share. Like, Halloween used to be a holiday that I loved, but like now I kind of dread it. Like, I'm not looking forward to going to work on Halloween, and then the
Mm.
people who are in costume and the, oh, well, why didn't you wear a costume? And like, well, I'm at work, right? Like, as cool as it would be to come to work in costume, I'm working today. And then after work, I will celebrate Halloween like a madman. But
Yeah,
like,
some
there's
people
not.
don't have the benefit of having jobs that like can you imagine like having to do like work in a morgue as coming in dressed up like a vampire? Like what are you doing? Like like no, we don't do that here. I don't know. It's also weird because we're also so global now, right? Like we're talking about Halloween in all these ways, but we're talking very distinctly about like American Halloween from like the 90s, right?
Yeah,
Like that is the Halloween that we are nostalgic for. Like that's not something that exists like outside of time and space, right? There's so many people in our lives now that this is just not a thing for them or it's so new to them that like it's also weird in that sense.
yeah, that's true. I didn't even consider on that level. I don't know. Like, like it was easy when it was like, oh, you're trick or treating. What are you, a kid? And it's like, no, I want free candy. I don't give a shit about anything like that. And I remember the year that I went trick or treating. I was 16. I was probably 17. Let's be completely honest with this. Um, and the girl that I went trick or treating with dressed up like a cheerleader, and she was not a cheerleader type person. But we found these old cheerleading costumes in like some back room at the high school. So she stole one and wore that. And everybody was like, oh, you're not really in costume, right? You're just wearing your cheerleading uniform. And it's just like, that broke her heart. I felt bad for her because like she
Yeah,
was kind
yeah.
of like a punker, so like it was a costume for her, and that was the reaction from every house we went trick or treating at. Memories.
Yeah. Well, you know, people suck.
People, yeah, and it's the thing, and everything is marketed and everything is created just to move the almighty dollar, which seems like a welcome segue into a little film that we were gifted 1 year too early. If I'm going to be completely honest, let's like we don't really generally celebrate the 29th anniversary of things. Probably should have waited till the 30th year. And that thing is Hocus Pocus 2.
Yeah, man. I don't know if they waited another year. I don't know if they could have gotten some of the performances out of certain people in this movie.
Oh, bro, I'm saying that they take the movie and they just wait.
Wait a year, just
Yeah.
sit on it now for a year. Yeah,
Yes. And then like
yeah.
all
I
the
don't know. I don't know what like what the choice was there. I do appreciate. I do have to say, I do appreciate the unabashed acknowledgement of it throughout the entire film. They are not afraid to say 29 years ago as many times as possible. 1993. Like they will talk about this constantly throughout the movie. So it's not so they're not hiding it either. So like there's to the point where I was wondering if it was like significant and they didn't even bother trying to make it significant. Whatever.
yeah,
They were just
no,
like,
it's
no, it
like
just happened 29 years ago.
yeah, if it was like the 100th anniversary of when they were killed or something like that, well, it's
No, or
300
like on the
years.
20
Like,
or 20 or 29 years is what it takes for the spell to regenerate. Even something bullshit like that. They didn't even bother with that.
well, I don't. The spell is broken at the end of the first movie, so like
Yeah, I
another
know.
black flame candle should not, like spells are not eternal. They're usually one cast, one use, right? If we're
I
gonna
don't
talk
know.
about
Well,
magic,
but you can reload a spell. Like if we're gonna go by D&D rules, so like yes, you use it once, but then you can reuse that spell. So like I don't know what that means
but
because
that
it's
didn't
basically they're
seem
just
like the spell that she cast.
well.
It
So the
seemed
big
like
thing is, yeah, no, the bigger thing is that and the end of this movie also implies it is that is that these movies don't it's the sequel problem of if the first movie resolved the issue, how do you top that in the second one? And Hocus Pocus 2 decides to just basically just be like, nope, yeah, that happened, but this is a new thing. And it's like, but then that means that all of the stakes of the first movie, of trying to kill the Sanderson sisters by the end of that movie and that huge finale at the end, you just pulled the rug out from under it by this movie existing. It's it's one of those things where you could easily be forgiven if you were like, oh, the sequel kind of ruins the whole thing for me. I don't necessarily agree with that. I am a big believer in the idea that you should be able to take individual movies on their own, but I do know that it happens. I mean, anybody that's ever heard me talk about Now You See Me Too knows how my feelings on how some movies can in fact affect their predecessors. But generally, I don't think that. And I will say here, I don't know if I really feel that because Hocus Pocus is such a uh, an important film. Not important's not the right word, but like an ever-present film in my life, our lives, growing up in New England, right? Like, and that sort of thing. Like Hocus Pocus has just kind of always been part of Halloween celebrations and lock-ins and sleepovers and all that sort of stuff. And it will still be, right? Like I've got enough nostalgia packed onto that movie that it's safe from any type of like issues that this sequel may present. But man, the biggest thing that this sequel represents is, yeah, everything they did in that first movie didn't matter. And then at the end of this movie, as I said, they kind of hint at the fact that everything they do in this movie doesn't matter either.
Yeah, that's a
The after credit scene of Hocus Pocus 2 basically looks at the plot line of Hocus Pocus 2, the last 30 minutes of Hocus Pocus 2, and just pokes it right in the eye. It's just like, yeah, but fuck that.
yeah, right. But the spirit of the Sanderson sisters can still come back, and they'll be evil again because that's what's enjoyable is them evil. Okay, I guess. Here's my problem, and this is going to be some sweet cross-promotion, #ad. We, for October, on the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, covered a film called Bedtime Stories, right? I'm acting like
Okay.
nobody's ever heard of this movie, which might be the most high-profile Adam Sandler film ever made, because it's his one and only collaboration with Walt Disney Pictures.
Right.
It is Walt Disney Pictures and Happy Madison presents Bedtime Stories.
For a man that we have frequently talked about having a very deep love of family stories in his movies, it is the one true family film of his, right?
Yeah, and it kind of spits in the face of what a family is. Wait, okay, so spoilers for how we felt about the film, but you should still go check it out. But what felt so interesting to me watching Bedtime Stories in the wake of having watched Hocus Pocus 2 is, for my entire life, and literally my entire life, there have always been critics who have said Disney has a formula. Disney is not like unique or anything like that. They have just boiled it down to what will make them the most money.
Yeah.
And watching Hocus Pocus 2, I'm like, this film was genetically built in a lab to try to be the most appealing piece of holiday schlock that will make them the most money. And it sucks because of that. Like, I didn't like the movie. I didn't really enjoy my time with the movie.
Hey, I actually very much disagree with everything you just said, but keep
That's
going.
awesome.
We'll talk
That's
about
fine.
it in a second.
And I think the reason is that the first Hocus Pocus, by all accounts, they just like made their own unique movie. And Disney was not a fan of that film, going so far as to release it in June of 1993. Like, it wasn't even released to capitalize on the Halloween holiday. You want to talk about holiday creep, right? 1993, Halloween happened in June. But then it becomes this beloved film by everybody. And maybe that is just a New England thing. I just know that it was so beloved that Dale was like, I'm never going to watch it because everybody talks about how much they love it, and I don't want to be a part of that. And it's like, oh, okay, Dale, I'm sorry.
That is still letting the crowd dictate what you're doing.
I understand
point that out, but
no, right? But I get it. It's the same type of thing I said. It was really difficult for me to like sack up and watch movies that everybody talked about, because like it's weird to watch it divorced from all of this praise that people layer upon the film. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That
of course it does.
how's it gonna live up to any of the expectations that the rest of the world have built up for this movie? That's really what that is for me. But yeah, so that first movie, by very design of it trying to be its own thing, becomes this unique piece of cinema that somehow defies all odds to connect to people. And then comes the second movie, and they're like, well, what did people like about the first movie? I bet they liked the music scene, and while I did like the music scene, that doesn't mean that the Sanderson sisters have to become a drag review that's come to town for the Salem Halloween this year. They don't need to be doing a bunch of songs.
I don't know, man. I sat there and thought, oh, they realized the camp potential of the first movie and in the 90s that was a thing that turned off Disney, and they were like, we don't do camp. That was like that's like the big thing about that first movie is they were just like, this is for lack of a better word at the moment, hokey, right? I'm trying not to use that word here, but that is the feeling of that first movie. What they didn't realize was that that was going to be the thing that people fell in love with because it's a holiday movie, and that's what we love in our holiday movies, right? Like it's that kind of that whole full package there. And so for me, like leaning into the drag aspect of it, like they were speaking to their audience. Like I
The
don't
drag contest did not bother me. Them singing "The Witch is Back" for no audience felt like, oh, this is pandering. This is pandering on Disney's part. This is the stuff that people have talked about my whole life that I've never really understood. It's really more that Bedtime Stories and Hocus Pocus 2 finally allowed me to understand that viewpoint of Disney is just trying to put together the most profitable film based on their market research.
Yeah, I guess as somebody that's known that for 35 years, like I'm over that surprise. So that was not really part of my viewing experience.
All right,
I'm
but
sorry that your revelations about Disney had to come to a head with Hocus Pocus 2, I guess.
I don't know. And it also felt like the only people there from the first movie are the witches. Like it would have been nice if Danny or Max or Allison had been in this movie. And especially when you consider that there already exists a book that is a sequel that was released for the 25th anniversary, in which, like, that's the whole follow-up, is that it's Max and Allison's child who runs afoul of the Sanderson sisters again. Like, that exists, that's out there, and now is rendered non-canonical by the events of Hocus Pocus 2, the movie, which is also something I'm not a huge fan of.
As somebody that read that book, I don't feel it's non-canonical so much as it just feels like it's another folk tale in this whole thing. Because that's the other thing about both the 1993 one and this one for me that I think both ring true is that they both feel very out of time. As much as they want to reference the time period of the first movie, the reason that it hit so hard and it hit my ear wrong every time they did it is because, like, I don't think of that movie as taking place in 1993. I think of it as thinking of a New England folk tale. So, like, it's the same, it's on the same, like, level for me as Sleepy Hollow. Right? Like I think about the story of Hocus Pocus 2 the same way that I think about the Headless Horseman. In that like it's a thing that happened in these New England streets and it could happen to you and like that kind of thing. So to me, all three of them, all four of them, if you include the book, like I feel like they're all very. I mean, no, all three of them. I was including Sleepy Hollow. I was including Sleepy Hollow in the Hocus Pocus universe. Like they feel so out of time and space that like they're. I don't really need them to be placed on a specific year like they kept doing. So like that's my big issue with pointing out that it's been 29 years is more not so much that it's an odd number of years, but so much that like I don't think about them in terms of spatial time. Like I think about them as just being stories. Like it's again, much like a Christmas movie or other Halloween movies, right? Like The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, everything that happens in that could just happen with a bunch of kids this year. Like there's nothing in it that is specifically time specific, right, of that era.
I mean, it could also open to a bunch of 20-somethings who are trying to find their way in the world, right? But that'd be below Slether.
Yeah, so I mean that's that to that point. So like the book is it's actually really interesting because a lot of what happens in this movie, it's not so much that it negates what happens in that book, so much as it just doesn't acknowledge it, which is okay because a lot of what happens in that book happens on a very personal. It's a weird. It's not, you're not wrong in that it like kinds of negates it, but it's like saying that like Amazing Spider-Man 2 negates like it's Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is it's like
but they just kind of do their own universe thing. It's very established that it's a different universe.
Right, but the idea being that's okay that like they're pocket universes in and of themselves because they are just folk tales. You know, like it might be cool if in Hocus Pocus 3, the movie, that they somehow tie them all together, but they could do that because there isn't anything that happens in Hocus Pocus 2.
From frickin' Ted Lasso, the wasted character potential and the witch mother, like I just wanted so much more from Hocus Pocus 2. And I know that's my own fault, wanting, like, building up
Yeah, I don't
expectations.
know what you wanted. I wanted to see Salem, Massachusetts have a dance party. I wanted to see Bette Midler making some really campy jokes, and I wanted to see Catherine and Jimmy on some Roombas, and I got all of that. So I was very pleased with my
Well, you
experience with
did
Hocus
not get
Pocus
all
2.
of that, because there's no Salem in this movie. It's
Well,
all
when I
Rhode
say,
Island.
well, yeah, okay, so I'm gonna sit home and cry because they didn't film on location. You're right.
No. Well, you did say I want to see some Salem. You didn't see any Salem.
I
I
wanted to
wish
see a quaint New England town with leaves turning in the background. Is that better?
that's fine. And you know what would have been better if the Sanderson sisters came to Rhode Island, right? The same idea of
Why?
this folk tale, because it's a folk tale that's shared around. So if there's some way for them to go to a new location, right? If you can't shoot in Salem, right? Which is really crazy, right?
First one wasn't shot in Salem. There were a couple of outside scenes in Salem, but
That are
most of it
that
was
are
actually
Los
shot in LA.
Angeles. I know that the reshoots and stuff like that. I'm aware of that. But there are scenes that are specifically shot in Salem. That you can't deny that.
There are two outdoor scenes shot in Salem. The rest is shot in a street in LA.
Really? Okay. Well, I thought there was
Yes.
more. I do know that the
No.
fountain from Friends is there.
I
which
am
is
not going to
very
sit here and listen to
interesting.
you bitch about a movie not shot on location being the reason it was destroyed for you because that's
Wait,
ridiculous.
why the fuck didn't they? Hubie Halloween shot on location?
What location? I
Salem.
don't even know the setting. I don't even know the setting of Hubie Halloween. I don't even think of a setting when I think of
It's
Hubie Halloween.
Salem, Massachusetts.
Didn't even know that, and I've watched that movie
And the
three
whole-
times.
and
That's
the
how
whole-
much that stuff doesn't matter.
And the whole bike sequence, the first bike sequence, is an homage to the bike sequence from the beginning of Hocus Pocus. He goes
know
down
that.
the same streets.
None of that registered for me. None of that
Okay.
mattered to me.
So, well,
Still
that-
enjoyed my time.
How many times have you been to Salem, Massachusetts in your life?
I mean, like dozens. We used to
Yeah.
go for like school trips and all of that shit. I
Okay,
don't,
so
what
it's
does that have
weird
to
to
do
me
with-
that, like, okay, so the thing about Hocus Pocus 2 taking place in Rhode Island is you recognize all of the Rhode Island landmarks if you're a Rhode Islander, right? Did that happen to you? Was that your viewing experience or no?
No,
Oh, okay,
I pretty much
so-
was well because there's a lot of stuff where like the ground moves, so they're clearly on a soundstage.
Right,
so,
but there's
so like I was
also-
like, oh, look at these Rhode Island woods, and then the ground would ripple, and I was like, oh, never mind, they're just on a soundstage. So no, I'm not registering any of this.
I mean, they are in Lincoln Woods for the establishing stuff, and then they go to a soundstage for those movements.
Right, and what
Like-
I'm saying is they all look so similar that obviously I couldn't tell one from the other. So
Okay.
obviously it wasn't that deeply ingrained in
so
me that I
that
could tell what was
Walgreens,
what.
that Walgreens they went to, the Walgreens on Federal Hill, that didn't register as the Walgreens on Federal Hill to you?
Nope.
That's congratulations. I owe you a handshake because that was the thing that everyone was like, you see that Walgreens on Federal Hill in the movie?
I mean, like,
Like-
I don't know what to tell you, man. I was
That's
just sitting
cool,
there
I'm
enjoying my
glad.
time with this movie. So like, it just didn't. I didn't sit there and pick apart shit in the background.
I didn't pick it apart either. It's just that in my head, it's like, oh, that's outside the James Pickens Theater. So the Halloween festival is taking place in Newport, and it's like, that's fun. Wouldn't it be something if like Gilbert built a magic shop in Newport, Rhode Island, because there were tales of, like, I don't know. I'm saying, like, use the fact that it's a folk story, right? And then let's talk about like the real fish in the casserole, which is the fact that at one point the movie Hocus Pocus is playing on a TV in Hocus Pocus 2. So then you have the ability to make it be that. It is a folk story. It is this movie, but like this one guy is obsessed with seeing if it's real. And
I
that
didn't
would have
catch
worked
Hocus
too.
Pocus playing on a TV. What point is that?
It's near the end of the movie when Bette Midler is flying around. She looks into one of the windows of a house, and on the TV is the scene with Gary and Penny Marshall from the first movie.
Okay,
yeah.
you totally didn't even register that. So
Okay, so like, I'm glad that you enjoyed Hocus Pocus 2. These are things that have been sitting in me since it premiered in September, talking about more holiday creep, and just like I've been looking forward to talking about it, but I guess I viewed it differently, and that viewing it differently is what led to me to not have much appeal for the film.
No,
And
so in terms of stuff that is totally out of the Disney formula, because this movie has a bunch of stuff out of the Disney formula, the entire character of Sam Richardson is super interesting. The character that he plays in this movie is super wild because like he has this really like he has this really sweet reason for doing what he's doing and then clearly finds himself in over his head and there's like this weird back and forth with him where on the one hand he does not want them to be evil and feels that like the reason is that they have been viewed that way is just because of like the intolerance of the time and that is a an ongoing kind of thing throughout this is that the reason that the Sanderson sisters are bad is not because they are witches. We need like it's this weird clarification that witches and this whole realm of magic and all of this does not instantly constitute evil. Even book itself is not evil. The entire story in this movie of Book not wanting the Sanderson sisters to make themselves the most powerful, or specifically not Winifred to not make herself the most powerful witch. And you know, there's things to be said. It's because she doesn't understand the price she'll have to pay and all this sort of stuff. But Book is trying to protect her from that and all of that. But it's just exactly that, right? Is like Book is this really powerful kind of unknown thing, and I'm really excited to see if they do a third one, like if they explore more of this, because like Book trying to stop them as part of this whole thing was really interesting, and it goes right in line with the Sam Richardson stuff. What was his name in the movie? Gilbert in
Gilbert,
this
yeah.
movie. Of like they're trying to use magic and they're trying to talk about how the world has changed and we've become more tolerant and obviously there's a lot of problems with like the Salem witch trials, which is the reason it has to take place in Salem as far as I'm concerned is because it's all tied to that. But like it's like shorthand for the universe that this is like that they may have been wronged, like that it is the best shorthand possible to be like maybe these women were just mistreated as opposed to actual like evil beings. But then we're shown that Winifred especially, but like the Sanderson sisters are evil because they're choosing to use this power in bad ways, right?
like
And we're
to
even shown
murder
that when the
children.
right
I
what
just,
but even in the
I
but
know,
even in
like
the
bad ways is like
but even in the no, because it's not just murdering children is my point. Because even in the beginning, like one of the first things that she does is they have the book, they have the ability to run off together, they have this ability to go make a life on their own. And what does she choose to do but to turn around and light the town on fire? Like she is not a good person, right? And that constant kind of push that like that there are people that can be witchy, that can be in this world and not be evil is an important thing for us to acknowledge was like really cool. Like it and completely kind of like something maybe more like maybe part of the formula in the last few years, but definitely something more recent than something that would have worked 30 years ago, right? I don't think you could have done a magic character in this and had them not be corrupted in some way back in 1993 when they did the
but
first one.
Billy in the well, Billy is the other pullover. He's not bad in the first movie, but he's a zombie. He's just
Well,
trying to
it's a
get him to
reveal,
cut
but
his
it's
mouth
right.
open.
He's a murder victim. Like we don't like Billy's a really interesting character in the first one, and it's what makes part of the first movie so much fun is that ability where it starts to kind of play with the gray. In that, yeah, they introduce Billy, but then it's revealed once his mouth is cut open is that he actually doesn't like the Sanderson sisters and was actually murdered by them. So you find out that he's a victim of them. So like that reveal of him just being kind of that. So like to that
But it is a
point, it's
magical
not.
creature that is not evil. That's all
But
I'm
to that
saying. I mean,
right, and
it's
to that
one in a
and to my point, that the whole idea being it's not against the formula of Hocus Pocus for this to be a thing, but specifically this idea that they're going to build out that part of the world of it being this whole thing of like, no, they are definitely evil. It's not just magic that is evil. Is really cool.
yeah, I get. I don't know. I feel bad. Like they were kids, and then they got this power, and the way they were treated as children. I feel bad for them, but then it's like, but it's kind of hard to still feel bad for you when like everything else I know about you has happened. When like your first act was to burn the town, and on some
Yeah.
level, I get that as like easy revenge because they were just basically cast out into the woods by the
It's almost
town.
like this story is somewhat of a tragedy, Devin. Like, yeah.
It's a tragedy up to a point. At what point does tragedy turn into, well, clearly you have to take some accountability for your actions.
Probably the point at which she loses her sisters to the ether and decides to just kill herself.
Okay.
That's which is what happens in this movie. So
Spoilers.
like
Yeah,
the
but you
movie
should
answers
see that.
that.
Yeah.
Like I right like these feelings that you're having like squishy things about, this is exactly what the movie is dealing with. And it's cool if that's like what you want to but you can't act like the movie's not answering these questions. That is literally the plot of this movie.
Right. It's just, I feel like we're trying to make all these villains sympathetic, right? Cruella, Maleficent. I'm sure there are more, but those are the two that jump to my mind because they're really good sides of the same coin. Maleficent, I think, is fantastic. Maleficent has done a wonderful job of taking this character who really is just like, she's slighted in the beginning of that movie to not be invited to this big party to celebrate the princess's birth. Like, I love how Maleficent did it. Cruella, I don't know how the Devil Wears Prada XB character is one day going to go into a murderous rampage to try to make a Dalmatian coat. I don't see it. Maleficent I get because it's a misinterpretation. Cruella being set before the events of 101 Dalmatians, I'm like, now I'm sad because eventually I see what she becomes. And this one feels more in line with Cruella of like, oh, these girls had potential and were literally like, shit upon by this entire town as children. Like as children, They were abused by adults.
Right. But I don't think we're supposed to sympathize with those adults. We're supposed to understand that those adults were not treating them right. I don't like. No, I don't know.
But then what the movie does is that you kind of like the Sandersons.
I don't understand what the issue is with complicating their story. I guess.
I have no problem with complicating their story. I just feel I wish it were done better. I don't know. I didn't like Hocus Pocus 2, and I guess that's it. And I don't know. I didn't realize how alone I was in that. I hadn't talked to anybody, I guess, who had enjoyed the film. You're the first person. So congratulations.
I don't know. We just put it on a group and had a good time with it, and I haven't put that much thought into it since. But
like most people were like, it was kind of disappointing. This and that. I don't know. Like, you shouldn't have expected great cinema. I'm the sequel to the 29-year-old movie. Like, everybody was kind of like, meh about it, and you're the first person who liked it, and I'm happy that you enjoyed it. Right? I'm glad that there's a shoe for every foot. And I wasn't prepared for it. And not that I was prepared to like have a nag fest about it, but like I thought that we could have had a discussion about those things. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it, Seachin. And I mean, like at the end of the day, like it is this movie that is trying to build on the lore of that world, and it expands it in a way that doesn't like upset the balance of anything that came before it. Like, I just don't. Like, the biggest thing about it is just simply the only time that I really felt that, the only true sin I felt that this movie committed in terms of the first one was just that whole idea of, we now understand that the Sanderson sisters are basically eternal. There is no way to truly ever get rid of them. They will always have the ability to come back, which is something that Disney, I'm sure, is super excited about, because they then get to do, dozens of movies with these characters if they want, and TV shows and books and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, because they're saying a series is going to be next, probably not a full-on movie, though everybody's up for it if they do another movie. Yeah, and also like the Sanderson sisters' cottage being in the middle of town, like, was it lifted up and put there, or did they just expand Salem out into it and it somehow not get destroyed? Like, I don't get it being in the town square. It's little things like that. Like another black flame candle, by all accounts, should not bring them back, because Binks' spell being broken means that the other spell is broken upon their death. It's just incongruous with the world that they've built for me.
Yeah, I didn't really get the feeling that it was in the middle of town. Like, it felt like it was like, definitely there was town around it, but I was it supposed to be in the middle of town, like in Town Square?
Yeah, I mean, it's right off of the town square. Yeah.
Because they fly a long time to get into town to do the whole dance thing where the party is happening in the town square, don't they?
Yeah, I
never got the impression that it was in the middle of town.
Okay, but I didn't get the impression from the first movie that it was out in the woods, because it had town around it.
Right. That's what I'm saying, is I thought it was somewhat in town, but not necessarily the middle of town, which is exactly where it seemed placed in this one. So I didn't have any weird juxtaposition between the two movies.
I don't know. I also never knew you could see the Newport Pell Bridge from Salem, Massachusetts. That must be a clear night. And that's the last one.
Which bridge is that one?
What? The one that you go over to go into Newport?
Oh.
The Pell Bridge, designed by Pell. You know, you go over the Jamestown Bridge, and then you go over that bridge that's like big, and it's lit up in the background when they're all flying.
Yeah, you go over like 3 bridges to get to Newport, so I really couldn't tell you.
Okay, so not the Mount Pleasant Bridge, not the Saukanaret Bridge, the Pell Bridge, the one designed by Pell. who also designed the Verrazano Bridge. No, the other Pell Bridge, because Verrazano was designed by Verrazano, and now it's named after the other guy. Whatever. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean,
didn't
Hocus
love
Pocus
that.
2 was a solid like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 film for me. Like
That's high.
I definitely,
Four,
and the fact that it's a
maybe.
holiday film, and the fact that it's a holiday
Oh,
film
Sejan's holiday
automatically
goggles are on.
elevates it to like a rewatch at some point. Like it's a guaranteed rewatch at some point because of the fact that it's fun and Halloweeny. So
I guess there's my problem. Like something like Fun Size, which I'm not a huge fan of, I would be willing to rewatch. I don't know if I'd ever rewatch Hocus Pocus 2. And that's disappointing to me. Yeah. Anything else set in and around New England?
I just wanted
That
to
you
point out
watched?
that
Oh, good.
2.7 billion minutes of Hocus Pocus 2 have been watched. It is a Nielsen record, so it is a
Wow.
record-breaking film. So just
And
to talk about what we're saying here, and holding a solid 69% on Rotten Tomatoes at the moment. So
so what,
that's just
four
just kind of
points
gives some
above
context
failure?
outside of
I
the two
don't.
of us,
Yeah,
huh?
that's good. 4 points above failure because 65 or lower is failure in the A to F scale. Sorry, I just
60 or lower is so actually.
well 60 or lower on that. No, I mean anything below a 65. How I was raised through schooling was an F.
It was below 60 for us, but I don't know
That's
why you would talk about films in that
congratulations.
regard. So
No, I'm just it's like 69 is not. I don't freaking know. I don't know how
it's a
Rotten
solid
Tomatoes
6
even
out of
works.
10, 7 out of 10 film, as I just said. So it's
Okay,
pretty much lands exactly where I was
is
just
is
saying it.
that critic or viewer?
Let's take another look at the
If we're gonna
page.
look
Let's
at
look
if
back up.
we're gonna bring up Rotten Tomatoes into the discussion, I'm curious.
That
Yeah,
is critic.
critic. Okay, what is the fan?
50. So it's you either like it or you don't.
Okay, and that's fine, and that's where I feel it is. I'm actually kind of happy I got to speak to somebody who liked it because it really just felt like this thing that didn't really work for people aside from the landmark living in Rhode Island of it all. So who
Yeah,
knows?
everybody I've watched it with don't live in Rhode Island. Maybe that has something to do with it.
But didn't you wait until you were in Rhode Island to watch it?
No, we didn't watch it at home. We watched it when we
Oh,
got back.
oh, okay. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. I
Yeah, no,
thought you
we
said you
didn't
were going
end
to
up with
watch
the
it when you were
opportunity to
traveling.
watch it at
Okay.
home.
Good. Well, now I'm disappointed I didn't go through with my plan to watch it in the Walgreens that's featured in the movie parking lot. Ended up being hard to get power there. It's a whole thing. But are there any other ways that you celebrated the season that are set in the New England area, Sejan?
I watched Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, the new HBO Scooby-Doo, and it was a freaking blast.
I was more talking about Scooby-Doo and the Gourmet Ghost, which is set in Rhode Island.
Oh, well, it's
But
set on Newport
it's set
Cove or
in
some
Newport
non,
Cove, Rhode Island. They say
which is
Rhode
not,
Island eventually. It's
yeah,
not
which
real.
is not a
Neither is
real
Quahog,
place.
Rhode Island. But they do take the time to mention that it's in Rhode Island because I'm
Yeah.
like, is this supposed to be Rhode Island? And then Gail, the newswoman, goes, in beautiful Newport Cove, Rhode Island. And I'm like, well, that's not a real place, but I'll allow it. It'd be weird if they said in Warwick Neck, which is what it's supposed to be, right? It's because like there's the Culinary Institute, and it's like, so is that Johnson and Wales, which is like located in Warwick Neck, right on the cove where you can
Well,
see
right, and with like
Newport.
Oakland Beach right there and
Yeah,
all that. Yeah.
like I
No,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, they do name drop Rhode Island in
They,
that one, which I
they,
really appreciate. Well, and it has to be like an old New England town, right? Because the whole story is about the Revolutionary War and all that. So like that was really interesting. Gourmet Ghost has some really phenomenal like historical twists to it, like the way that they ground the ghost in like, oh, maybe he was a spy giving locations to the British. Oh no, it was not so good. And then being like, well, we're gonna own this because he was a spy, and and our relatives, our family was like built on lies. And then you find out at the end that it was all okay because he was actually giving bad instructions to the British. Like it's a roller coaster of a film as far as like the background story goes. Like, so in terms of like good mystery, it's one of the best mysteries out of the Scooby-Doo movies that I've seen this year. I've been doing a ton of them for the Halloween season though.
that's cool. I mean, I enjoyed everything except for like the celebrity chefs because I don't have any connection to it. I have to imagine that TV Skip Taylor is the one that you thought I would want to be Guy Fieri.
So we had a so so we had a theory that it was supposed to be so the main one in it is
Bobby Flay.
what's his nuts there, Bobby Flay, right? And then Giada is the other big celebrity chef that they get for it,
Well,
right?
and then
So those are your
Samuels and the supermodel, like
that's
those
true.
were
They do
actually
show up.
real, and
Yeah,
they're
they
really
do.
voiced by them too. I thought
Yeah,
they were
they
fake, made up for the movie.
No, they get cameos. They get a couple of lines. They're just not as integral to the plot
Yeah,
as Bobby Flay and Giada are, right? The other two chefs that are integral to the plot that are not played by celebrity chefs are TV's what's his name,
TV
Spike or
Skip
whatever it is.
Taylor
Spike
and
Taylor, not Spike Taylor.
Sous Chef, the sous chef.
And so sous chef, we were just like, well, that's clearly supposed to be Amberell, right? Like that is supposed to be Amberell, and Skip Taylor was supposed to be Guy Fieri, and then when they couldn't get them, they just rewrote those characters, right? Like that's
Right, but
'cause
I am never ever going to wish that Dana Schneider is not doing a voice in a movie ever. And like the fact I'm here, Dana Schneider, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in love with this character. He better
but
not be
you
the bad guy.
Right. You watch that movie though, and you're just like the entire time you're watching Sous Chef and Skip, and you're just like, oh man, this was totally meant to be them because of everything that goes on in the
Yeah.
TV like
Well, I don't know
telethon for
anything
the
about
hotel and all
it.
that. Yeah.
Oh, does Guy Fieri pretend to be Elton John a lot? I don't know. I really dug it. I knew like right away that it who the bad guy was. But it's interesting because we're also going to talk about Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo. I also knew right away who the bad guy in that one was, but it talks about how like a good mystery and a good script, it doesn't matter that I already know who the bad guy is. It
I didn't
doesn't.
know for either of them, just to be the other side of the coin. I don't. I mean, to be honest, it's because I don't really think I consider that when I'm watching Scooby-Doo. I'm not sitting there trying to figure out who the villain is.
Oh, I mean, I think that just comes from the fact that Scooby-Doo was a pup named Scooby-Doo, and that was very much a whodunit show. Like, it was, you knew Freddie Jones was going to say it was Red Herring, and then it was like, no, it's going to be this person. So then when I started watching original Scooby-Doo, Where Are Yous, it's like, well, then who's the person behind this? Because at the heart of every Scooby-Doo, there is the mystery of who's actually behind the ghost. And we want to talk about my skepticism and the fact that there's probably a reasonable explanation behind this, Chief, is that it probably started with Scooby-Doo. Because all the time there's real ghosts and shit, and then it's like, no, it's actually just a fan and a flashlight. And that's what makes it look like there's a ghost there.
Yeah, except except for the ones where it's not, and there's actual magic. But
Right.
yes.
But those are like, oh man, I freaking love Reluctant Werewolf. I freaking love.
Cyber Chase.
I mean, fuck Ghoul School. Ghoul School's gross.
Ghoul School.
It's bullshit though. I hate Ghoul School. But I love
What's
the Boo
the
Brothers with the Three Musketeer ghosts. The Three
Yes.
Musketeer, the Three Stooges ghosts. That one is great. Like because it's Ghostbusters.
Goblin King? That's the other big one.
Oh,
That's
Goblin King
where
is
magic is real.
Yeah. Zombie Island until Return of Zombie Island, where they're like, actually, there were no cat people or zombies. But that was the best
I actually
part
can't
about
find
it.
Return to Zombie Island anywhere.
Yeah, it's buried out there. I might have a copy, or I might have a way to get a copy to you. So we'll do that for something else. I mean, like I think we haven't had an actual production meeting to discuss it. We're gonna have some Scooby-Doo stuff coming down the pike. It is related to the Say Report in a lot of ways. We've done a lot of talk about Scooby-Doo, and I have some ideas that I'd like to bounce off Siegen. So it's something to look forward to, is what I'm going to say. But yeah, I did like the gourmet ghost, even though I kind of hoped that Bobby Flay would turn into a werewolf at some point, because he kind of looks like a werewolf. Except what I didn't like, and this might be a well-worn trope, you've watched a lot more Scooby-Doo than I have, especially this season. Is it often that, like, oh, we're going to go see my uncle, and the uncle is a fucking celebrity? Or is that, like,
That's
a new thing?
that's Yes, that's how the all the Scooby-Doo team-ups always happened. They were always related to Sonny and Cher, the Harlem Globetrotters, like Batman, like that's how they did the celebrity crossovers back in the day, is they would do all of that stuff. Like, we're
Oh,
gonna go see my rich uncle that we've never talked about. Fred has a lot of rich uncles that they never talk about again or since. Like,
oh. I
like
guess
that's
I'm
that,
thinking
yes.
of the new Scooby Doo movies, and a lot of the time they already were kind of associated with the characters, so they never talked about how. So this is the first time that I've ever seen it. So like maybe that trope would get tiresome to me, because let me tell you, Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. If we're ready to transition into that one, I'm fucking sick of one specific trope with Scooby Doo, and I don't know like if that's the reason I didn't like Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, or just the fact that like it kind of felt really phoned in as a Scooby Doo story. I mean, this is me again, and I'm taking it too
I feel
seriously.
so like it was the most well researched and most like it loves Scooby-Doo on a level that I love Scooby-Doo. Like the amount of references and the amount of twists and things that made sense in retrospect, not just in the movie, but in the light of all of the old series. So okay, so for Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, new movie up on HBO Max. The big thing about it and where it is placed on the Scooby-Doo timeline is it is entirely based on the after events of the original Where Are You Scooby-Doo, right? The
The
original
first
series.
season of what Scooby Doo,
Yeah,
Where Are You? To the fact that it actually slots in before the 13th episode of that series.
yeah, it and so like in that sense it has like that kind of animation style in like when it's static it looks very much like it's just like shots from that. In motion not so much because obviously animation has come a long way in 50 years, but like it is that kind of thing. And so all of the references to ghosts and costumes and stuff that they make are all references to baddies from that earlier one. And this is actually not new. A lot of the Scooby-Doo movies will kind of lean into that. In Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King, they end up in a underworld bar that is phenomenal because it is filled with a whole bunch of the old like the old baddies, which we know to be uncovered guys in those episodes, but in this world they are real. And then they all sing a bar song together. It's very fun. So like, but referencing like that old stuff, right? Like, so it kind of hits some really weird notes, not just with the old series, but with some of the movies we've been watching recently too.
I mean, because the thing that I really liked, right? Because I'm gonna be mad at a trope, and I'm gonna talk about that. But I will say that they once they figure out, like, they add this new wrinkle to the Scooby Doo world, that all of the costumes were made by a singular like seamstress named Coco Diablo, and that like that's how they're able to be so kind of supernatural and do such magical things, is because essentially Scooby-Doo Tony Stark is building everybody Iron Man suits
Well,
to do that.
she's yeah, the anti because she also is pretty villainous in her own right. Like
Oh yeah,
she's
yeah.
let's not
She's
yeah, let's
she's
not
like
act like she was
Justin
some
Hammer
heroic
or
fairy.
Whiplash, but yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah. She's not a super. She'd be a villain. She definitely would be on the villain side of the spectrum. But she's building all these suits for people, and being actual detectives, Mystery Inc. realizes that like, oh well, this is the same fabric, this is the same stitching, so they're able to locate it, and they're able to locate it before the 1,000 volt ghost happens, and they do a sting operation to capture her, and they go in the guise of the exact character from that episode who
Right.
ends up being the ghost. And I'm just like, that whole sequence was like, this is awesome, because I've always been a huge fan of the 1,000 volt ghost. So like the way that they did it, and that whole sequence was excellent. But then the reveal that they that they were like Mystery Inc. pretending to be the guy, it had me scratching my head briefly, because like, well, they haven't done this yet, but are they aware that this guy is going to try to do this thing? Because it happens. It's still an episode of Scooby Doo. How am
Right.
I supposed to reconcile this? And I know that it's just a
Yeah,
TV
no,
show.
I
I
mean
get
like
that.
they
Like,
yeah, there's you also have to remember that in those old Scooby-Doos, Fred, Daphne, and Velma never believe that the ghosts are real, right? So
Yeah.
there's always that idea that they always know that it's somebody up to something. So it wouldn't really matter to them that they're seeing somebody in another costume, right? They're just aware that it's somebody in a costume. And then Shaggy and Scooby are overreacting, like, and that's just what they do. So I don't know. It didn't. It feel like they would act in that episode exactly like they act in that episode. See
Yeah.
that costume, be like, well, that's clearly not a real ghost. Go after the guy and find out it's not a real
I don't know. The
ghost.
1,000 volt ghost is cool because it looks like it's made of electricity.
Well, right,
And
yeah.
also, but
And
like,
anybody that doesn't know that story would be fucking scared shitless of it.
yeah, exactly. It's walking electricity, man. But I'm saying they've seen the costume. So, like, when they see it again, they're like, this is very familiar to the fake story we made up. I think that the movie, and again, it's all like floating timeline and all that other stuff.
Well, it's also a
Whatever you're gonna do.
parody.
Yeah.
Like that's the other side
It
of
is
this
supposed
movie.
to be a parody, right? Like,
This movie is very much a spoof. Like it's a
okay.
loving satire.
Yeah.
Like it clearly loves the source material, but like they openly make fourth wall jokes about how absurd situations are, and like the entire plot line of Fred, kind of being, and this is the same thing that they do in the live action Scooby-Doo movie too, of like missing the mystery and like loving the danger and the adventure, and like people being like, Fred, these were people doing like terrible things, and he's like, oh, I know, but wouldn't it be great to solve a mystery? I mean, that's the entirety of a pup named Scooby-Doo, is
Yeah.
Fred doing that kind of shit where they're like, Fred, behave yourself, and he's like, yeah, but this could be fun, and it's like, fun is not the point here, Fred. We're trying to stop crime. Although I would argue that every episode of Scooby-Doo I've ever seen, the kind of crimes they're stopping, and again, they make fun of this in the movie, are like domestic matters that would not actually be handled by the police. Like some stuff gets out of hand, but the majority of the stuff that the Mystery Inc. gang handles is not stuff that the police would ever care to get involved in. And they bluntly call that out in this movie, and it was one of the funniest moments.
by that cop who looks a lot like Steve Harvey, but is voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I hate that trope. I hate that trope up, down, left, right, anywhere in entertainment. The like, we've succeeded in our goals and now life is boring. I hate that trope. Like, get a hobby, right? Find something else to do with your time. Are you really just going to be defined by this one thing in your life? I don't love that. I understand
mean,
that it's a show and it's a joke. And
well, no, it's a play, but it's a play on the idea of like the soldier come home from war can never, or like the prisoner out of prison can like never really reintegrate themselves back into society because something is broken inside of them. And then like it's applied to a bunch of kids solving mysteries about home invasions. Like that's the bit. I don't know. I mean,
I've
yes,
never liked
you
it.
can call it an overused trope, but at this
Yeah.
point, we're talking about Scooby-Doo. So if you want to talk about overused tropes, like Exhibit A is Scooby-Doo, like
True. I mean, but they
especially
wrote a
one
lot
that
of
is
the
trying to
tropes.
spoof the original
Yeah.
series, right?
I don't know. It's just I've never liked that thing where like, well, now that the Shredder's dead, what are we supposed to do, Leonardo? And it's like, I don't know, guys. It's like, I don't know, like be teenagers for once instead of ninjas. I don't know. Like it'd be nice if like they could reintegrate themselves and it wasn't like that institutionalized to only knowing how to like solve mysteries.
I can't wait for the next Scooby-Doo movie when they solve all of the mysteries and decide to just open a bakery together, and the
Like, I'm
entire
just
thing
saying,
is about the business issues of. Like, why are you watching a story if you're not interested in them having these conflicts?
It'd be nice if they had lives after the stuff, because that means that
That would be the most boring Scooby-Doo movie in the world
dude.
to
And
watch.
I'm not saying it's the full 90 minutes. I'm saying that we get like a 15-minute interlude of them happy and finding themselves in society. But then, oh, here comes up because nature abhors a vacuum, so some new villain shows up. They're always working, and that makes me sad for them. They're never going to get to enjoy life. I'm sorry.
You have much deeper thoughts about this than I did as I was enjoying my time with this.
Well, there's me. I mean, this isn't just about Scooby-Doo. It's specifically about that trope. Because very often, like everything else shot, like the soldier coming home from war, right? Like the Rambo of that trope or everything like that.
Right.
It makes it sad when it's in kids' entertainment. I just don't like the message of it. And then I feel bad for these characters that I legitimately care for a lot of the time. Right? Like, this is going to be your whole life?
I just thought it was funny that they were doing like a Rambo joke and a Scooby-Doo thing, but yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, we're different people. But the trope that I am fucking sick of is that Velma falls for the bad guy. I'm tired of it. I'm super tired of it.
What other one does that happen in?
Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
Where she falls for Seth Green.
Yeah, Seth Green's the bad guy.
Well, yeah, but that's one other thing. Two lines do not make a trope. 2 points do not make a trope. Is there other times where that's happened? I honestly forgot about Scooby-Doo. I forgot
Yeah,
about the
most
ending of
people
Scooby-Doo
have. I'm
2.
the only people who I Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed I really enjoyed. I know it's very different from the James Gunn one that came before, but different universes, it kind of checks out. It makes it feel like maybe that other movie is a different style of stuff. They did a real lot to reboot it from the first movie because they didn't like the biting sarcasm and cynicism that Gunn put into that movie.
No, they just realized they couldn't do that a second time, and I
Yeah.
think that that was to their credit. It's
Oh
that
yeah.
like they could not remake that movie, and they could not do a sequel in that style and have it. They could maybe now, but not 5 years after the first one or
Yeah.
whatever it was, 3 years after the
Yeah,
first one.
it was like right along the side. It was quick, is what it was. But yeah, so to then have this movie, which is supposed to be the satire, and then like for it to kind of bite off of Monsters Unleashed. I guess if people aren't remembering, if I'm one of the only people who like still thinks of it, then that's fine. But it's one of those situations where I'm just like, I don't love it. Like I have no issue with Velma falling for a woman. I really enjoyed that aspect of this movie. But then the fact that like, why can't Velma just fall for like a nice person? Why is it always gonna be a bad guy? I
You
want
want
Velma
some
to be
really
happy,
boring
damn it.
Scooby-Doo stories where they just like run an inn together and then Velma gets married and has kids. Like,
Okay, you know why? You know why? Because
I don't
Scooby Doo, as it is fucking boring to me. So these things, these departures from Scooby Doo, where
But to
Velma,
be clear, what wouldn't be boring to you is them finding a new line of business besides solving mysteries, and Velma finding herself a nice partner to that has no complications.
first,
Those would be interesting to you to watch,
let
but
me
these
tell
were
you.
not.
Okay, so we've talked about two Scooby Doos in this episode, right? Scooby Doo and the Gourmet Ghost. I believe they're all fucking each other. They feel like they're just a collective. But then you get to something like Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, and it feels like, oh no, the established Daphne and Freddy sort of thing there. Shaggy's in love with the dog, and Velma's out there looking for
I think you need
a
to
partner.
stop going into movies wanting them to do things for you. You seem to have a
Well, it's
real
not.
issue today of like talking about like taking in entertainment and it not meeting your
I know
expectations, and I just don't know. I
tempering
don't know how to.
expectations is a thing that we preach on the show, and I will admit. Watching Hocus Pocus the night before watching Hocus Pocus 2, I was probably pretty much setting that movie up for failure. I understand that. I get that. I will own that. The Scooby Doo movies is not so much that like it's like, oh, they won. They fucking won. I want them to celebrate. I don't want them to be sad because they won. Like it's just that's what I want for my friends, and I view Mystery Incorporated as my friends. And
But I mean, I guess the other part of this is that like the entire story is about them figuring this out. Like the entire thing is like Daphne literally has conversations about how she doesn't know who she is in the world and wants to figure that out. And like it is their journey is to discover all of this. So again, you're also you're asking all of these things, and 5 minutes into the movie, I would be right there with you saying, yeah, I know. What are they going to do now that this is over? And I do hope they find something besides this, and blah 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 blah. But the movie does go on to address all of this. That's the other side of it.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I was disappointed in how it. You know what it is? Here's what it is. Here's what it is at like the base level of it. I do. I find Scooby Doo boring, and I certainly find Scooby Doo a little bit boring now that I'm older because like the mystery.
I
I
think you just find
knew
Halloween boring, my dude. Like
that could
between
be
Hocus
it.
Pocus and this, and not doing anything this year, I think you just might be done with Halloween.
There's the saddest reveal of it all. But no, like the second they introduced the character who ended up being behind everything in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, I'm like, well, that's the bad guy. And then they like turned it into this whole doppelganger ghost thing, and I'm just like, this is not interesting to me. This is boring to me. This mystery is boring. I would trade in 100 boring mysteries, a la the mystery of Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, for like one movie where yeah they run a B&B. That'd be wonderful.
I didn't know who did it, and I was pretty convinced that the person that they were leaning into was the one that did it, and I was just ready for it to be. That's the other side of it, is your your feelings about, without spoil. Why are we not spoiling this
We
movie?
can
Because a lot
spoil
of the
it.
stuff that you're
Spoil them.
talking
Yeah,
about,
we can talk
yeah,
about it.
well,
Yeah.
so like your whole thing about her falling for the quote unquote bad guy, we find out by the end of this movie they're not. So like it's actually the complete opposite of what happens in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
I
It
mean,
is not at all what happens in Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed.
because she
We
helps them
think
in
they're the
the
bad
end.
person at first, and then we find out that they are not at the
But they
end.
are bad because they're selling these costumes, these villainous costumes.
So we understand that crime, and that's a crime that happens before, right? But by the
Yeah.
time that we see them, they are not the villain of this story, and in fact become one of the heroes of this story. So like they are a turnabout, which unlike in Scooby-Doo 2
Where
Monsters
like he gets
Unleashed,
worse and worse
where
and worse.
you think
That's
he's
true.
the good guy the entire time, and then you find out he's the bad guy. It's actually the complete opposite of that.
I don't know, but it's still I that's a good point. I guess it does, but at the same time, like she's still going to jail. She's not going to jail for her crimes, for being an accessory and sort of a
And
mastermind of
thus
all
does
these
not
crimes.
deserve love. You are right. I'm so sorry. I
No,
missed
Velma
that
can
part.
still care about her, but like it's not like she's not absolved of her former sins by that.
I mean, that's literally what prison is for, but okay. Absolutely. Absolving someone of their previous crimes is exactly what
Right.
prison is built
So if
for,
she,
but
but I get that. It's about rehabilitation. I understand that. But she's not rehabilitated at the end of it. Like she did one nice thing, but it also kind of feels like she did one nice thing because her name was on the line. I mean, what
yeah.
happens to? Let's talk about the fact that like the warden was not doing anything sort
You
of
have
like
a real problem with complicated female characters. I don't know what
that's
to tell
not
you.
wow.
That's exactly
Ouch.
what's just happened here. We're
Okay,
talking
you
about a
could
female character that has complications, and she is not exactly a hero. She's not exactly a bad guy, and you don't know how to handle her.
yeah. Okay, you can do that if you want. I feel like she's not complicated at all. I would want more depth from this character. I have problems with characters that people call complicated female characters, but really they're just the broadest strokes to try to appeal to the most people. That if we're really gonna talk about it, it's broad strokes. The little stuff with the Sanderson sisters in the beginning is completely forgotten until the resolution at the end of the movie.
Resolution is 30 minutes out of an hour and 40-minute movie. They end up in the woods for the final resolution of that movie at an hour and 10. I actually looked at the clock. I was like, "Oh, is this movie almost over?" No, there's still 30 minutes left, and I thought that we were at the end of this movie. But no, they spend 30 minutes in that, man.
Okay,
Like it goes on for a while.
I don't know. It felt like broad strokes, and that's it. I would like depth, and it'd be I don't know. I didn't dig it. I knew
What would
that
be
it
a
was
good example of something in this realm? Like, let's go that route. What would be something you do enjoy in this realm?
of like Halloween stuff. I guess I don't really enjoy anything.
Halloween female-based, like complicated figures. Like, what is one that you can name? Not even a movie. What is a complicated female figure in the Halloween realm that you?
I don't. I can't. I honestly can't think of one off the top of my head. Maybe Sydney, but then like her actions in the third Scream movie are in direct competition with how she has acted in all the other Scream
I
films.
don't consider Sydney complicated. Do you really?
I mean, I think that based on what the first movie, no, but then they put a lot of depth and growth into the character.
I guess that's true. If you're talking about like getting into later films and she's had a lot of shit happen to her,
Yeah,
she definitely
like,
is a lot more of a badass. Yeah, they complicate her throughout the films. Yeah, that's true.
like that. Like that's the thing, and I understand, but I don't think we're ever
Except
going
you
to
don't
see.
like later films? Is that what you were just saying?
No,
Wait,
I
let's
think
finish
that the
the
later
thought.
films are better. I think that 4 is great. I think that Scream released this year was fantastic. I hate the first 3 Scream movies, but you give me Scream 4, Scream 5 any day of the week. Those are really enjoyable because there's more complication there, but they still seem to fit into the universe. I don't know. The problem with Coco Diablo is we're never going to see Coco Diablo again. And also, she's in a parody movie. It's hard not to watch Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo and have a parody. You know who is really good? Freaking the Gourmet Ghost, Gianna. I don't know who she is. I don't know how to say her name. Gianna. It's just Gianna. It's not spelled.
And
It's
that's
Gianna.
her like celebrity chef
Yeah.
name, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she was great in the depths that they kept adding to her. But like, where does it come to the fact that like, is it almost a Mary Sue? The fact that she has a solution for every problem that is coming up, like, is difficult. But I liked all the stuff that she was doing. And Bobby Flay's like, I have tongs. Like that
No, the
was
fact that they
good.
made Giada De Laurentiis like a badass, like she could do. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about the fact that she always carries fennel around, which has also ended up actually being important later too.
That was
But the
great. It
fact that
was really well.
she could do martial arts, and she is capable of like carrying all of them when she's walking around with them all in her hands, right? No, they do a lot of good work with Giada in that one for sure.
Like they
Yeah,
complicate that character, and I don't know anything about her as a celebrity chef, but it feels sort of like what they did to Sarah Michelle. I love what they did with Sarah
well,
Michelle
they
Gellar in the first
well,
Scooby Doo
I
movie.
and
Like
I will
it's
also, I was going to say, I will point out that all that they really did with Giada De Laurentiis in that movie is just took all of Daphne's personality and just gave it to
and
her
gave it to
instead.
her. Yes,
So I
that's.
wouldn't really call that complicating Giada De Laurentiis so much as just stealing one of the good female characters that they had, but that's fine.
I mean, they did the same with Fred and putting it on Bobby Flay, and then you realize just how like milk toast Fred Jones is.
I mean, we've all
That we
known
should all know
that's the
forever.
bit in
That's
Trick or
the biggest bit.
Treat.
Yeah. Um, Yeah. And this whole thing of like Daphne actually being this badass, I've loved that journey in Scooby Doo. So I guess it's just like, but that again, it feels earned, right? It feels earned to the fact that like after Scooby Doo and Scrappy 2, that series where it was just Scooby, Scrappy, and Shaggy solving mysteries, because those are the three guys who are going to stay in the mystery solving business of the gang, right? They add Daphne in to be the sort of leader of that crew because she was the character. Like we need a female character, and like, oh, we're gonna bring Daphne back. Well, it would make more sense to bring back Velma, but they brought back Daphne because they're
Well,
like, we can do
no,
some more with her.
right, and they can also draw her in fashionable clothes and things like that. Like
I don't know.
there's
In
marketing
the
bits and
Curse of
sell
Scooby,
Daphne toys.
the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, Daphne is wearing a jumpsuit the entire time, and it is. I love that. I love that she is the female in that show, right? She is the female cast member in that show. She's dressed like April O'Neil, but not as revealing as April O'Neil, right? Like it's zipped
No,
up
I
the
was thinking more
entire
it's more of a
time.
reference to the Bionic Woman, isn't it?
I always kind of thought it might be a reference to Speed Buggy and the female from that show because it's very similar outfitting.
I
But
would
like,
argue I think that also is a reference to Bionic Woman. Like the woman in the tracksuit solving mysteries bit is just
oh, I
where
think
my
I
mind
when
goes.
I think
So
of the Bionic Woman, I see her in a blue dress. I don't ever really see her in a tracksuit in my mind. I like maybe I'm
I
I
don't
think
know.
I'm basing it off of the later Bionic Woman series, not the original one.
I
I
don't know. I
didn't.
just had a Bionic Woman toy growing up, and she definitely had a tracksuit on that was a different color than the Bionic Man's tracksuit, and you could look through his eye.
No, you could look through his boss's eye.
Oh, his boss's eye.
His
That's right.
boss's eye is the bionic eye, because Oscar had a bionic eye put in later episodes of the $6 Million Man. I don't know enough about that show. I got to go back and watch The Fall Guy though. I love that theme song, and now they're doing a Fall Guy movie. What the hell is that? That's not related to Halloween though. I don't know. It just like Trick or Treat with both of them. I knew who the bad guy was, and like even the double like bait and switch of Gourmet Ghost of like it's Brad, and I'm like, no, it's not Brad, it's the other guy who was on his phone during the first attack. The entire time he's on his phone, clearly he's controlling the ghost. And what a great way to like give himself an alibi by being in front of all of you. And I'm like, they're working together at the end of the day. So like he can't be the mastermind behind it. Brad doesn't seem it. And then the reveal that like the guy double masked. I'm a big fan of the double mask reveal. But I knew who the bad guy was in the Gourmet Ghost. And like, oh, and then like, oh, why does he have lemon juice? And I'm like, oh, he was writing coded messages. Like all the mystery stuff, the mystery in Scooby Doo is boring to me. I am purely watching it for the characters. So watching the characters get to do things besides solve mysteries is what would be appealing to me. The Ninja Turtles doing an Anthony Bourdain style no reservation series where they travel around the world and expand their palate away from pizza. I would watch every episode of that series.
I, I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's definitely weird stuff out there. Maybe you'll like the new Mindy Kaling Velma show that everybody's pissed off about because it is distinctly not Scooby-Doo-ish enough for them. I don't know. We have not seen it yet, so I feel like everybody out there trying to judge it, it is like maybe missing a beat that we need to all kind of take in first. But maybe it'll be right up your alley because it sounds like it's going for exactly all of that sort of stuff.
I don't know. I'm definitely gonna watch it. I think the big issue with Velma, if we're gonna like boil it down, is that they released that teaser video literally on the heels of the fact that we're confirming Velma as gay in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo. So then when it was a different universe, like
Well,
people just couldn't
that I also take
understand
issue with
that.
that because she has also had female interests before. But anyway, yeah,
Right, but it
I have a lot of issues with the conversations around the new Velma show and the stuff that people are complaining about, like the idea that Scooby Doo's not in it. We've done that already. I don't know why everybody's acting like that's brand new. Velma possibly being somewhere else on the scale rather than straight. Nope, we've done that
no.
many
That's
times before.
that's
Like,
the problem. No, that's not what they're talking about with the Velma show. In the Velma show, she's very much on the spectrum, closer to straight. Like there's been stuff where like she's going to be hitting on Freddy and things like that. So people thought that they were already undoing the reveal that she's gay in Trick or Treat Scooby Doo with the new Velma show. Like
that's
that
not
was
the
one of the big
critiques,
complaints.
and I'm being generous when I say those words. Those are not the critiques that I've been hearing, but
Okay,
I'm
but that was
interested to
one of the
see.
critiques
Again,
as it
I have
came out.
also been trying very hard to filter a lot of that stuff out because we have not seen it. So I think anybody out there trying to judge it yet is really, really, really doing it a disservice.
Right. Well, but for me, like that's the type of stuff I'm very interested in. Is people not understanding that there can be multiple universes and multiple representations of characters. Like that's what
I
Scooby Doo has been
I
doing that
love
for
you,
kind
but
of
this is
ever.
everything that you just complained about with Hocus Pocus too. So
But Hocus Pocus 2 doesn't make the steps to make that happen. Hocus Pocus 2 wants to be a direct sequel to what happened in 1993 and kind of feel like it's existing in its own universe. You have
Mhm.
to pick a lane, Siegen.
No, you don't. It's 2022. You definitely do not. The requel, the reboot sequel is like alive and well, my dude.
Oh,
Like it is the what you just said is the complete opposite of what every movie and film television executive has been saying for the last 5 years. They want that exact cake and they want to eat the fuck out of it. They
well,
want to reboot the thing,
I
but
haven't
also like
enjoyed
leave.
any of them. I didn't like Afterlife because of what it did for other canon things in the Ghostbuster universe. Scream I liked, but they call it a requel or a reboot, and it's not really because like all of the characters are there and it's connected to everything that came before. Like it really pays homage to that and then just introduce it. It's a Scream sequel, is what it is, because that's what every sequel to Scream has done. Dominion and like the Jurassic World of it all, like they acknowledge that Isla Sorno happened, but that's about it. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's just how I'm coming in and I'm not enjoying the entertainment that's happening these days.
10 years ago, everybody was complaining because all they were ever doing was just remaking stuff and Hollywood had lost all imagination. 20 years ago, people were complaining that all they'd ever done is done sequels and remakes and Hollywood had no imagination. 30 years ago, like this is the same conversation people have been having since movies got started. Is like
9 months
some of
after
the
King Kong, people were making the complaint. So that's
exactly like so like this idea that like 90% of what's coming out is not hitting for you, like that is fine. That's been the way of the world, man. There just might have been a time period in your life where there was like a sweet spot. People talk about like, oh, the golden age of television where everything was just stellar. There was a bunch of shit on too. We just didn't talk about the shit because there was just enough good stuff that we didn't have to. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, Lost was during the golden age of television. Do we still talk about Lost in that way? No.
no.
Like The Office was, and there's been a lot of like looking back on The Office and really questioning some of our sensibilities there, you know?
True, very true.
I
Which
just
office is what I'm gonna say.
I
But yeah.
guarantee you that while you may not be having the greatest Halloween of your life right now, there is some kid out there that thinks all of this shit is great, and then in 5 years they're going to be comparing everything coming out to this stuff and complaining about how none of it is as good as this. I mean, like the hocus pocus of it all. Like we could sit here and talk about Rotten Tomatoes numbers and about how people are feeling right now, but you know what? This is exactly how everybody felt when the first one came out. I remember when Hocus Pocus came out in June of that year, and people just kind of blahing, you know, poo-pooing it. Just like blah-blahing is not a thing, but poo-pooing is. But like, you know, and that being a thing, and like critics talking about it, and Disney being disappointed in it, it got revitalized later in life. And that was what stirred this stuff for the sequel. So the sequel kind of not landing for you right now kind of is on par with the first one. And I'll be happy to revisit it in 10 years and see how everybody feels about it.
Well, I hope that in 10 years everybody feels better about it. I mean, I'll still probably be the person who's like, about it. I don't know. I guess it's just it didn't work for me this year. I liked the Gourmet Ghost, so like I enjoy Scooby Doo, and I liked that one because like it's not until halfway through that they're like there as mystery solvers. I really dug that. That they're just like we're just visiting my uncle, and then halfway through they're like, all right, now that there's a ghost here, we're gonna touch in. But they got that whole sequence where they're cooking together, and like that was fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, notably, you're talking about the 4-year-old one as opposed to the brand new one too.
Yes,
Like that's
exactly.
the
That's
other
what
thing
I'm
about
saying. It's just, but also like the parody level. Thank you for confirming my thought that Trick or Treat Scooby Doo is meant as a parody. But then, like, that makes any of the growth to the characters or things that they're confirming in it, like, you question, well, is it really confirmed or is it just in search of some satirical joke or comment?
confirmed for what? Like to what end? I guess would be my question to that statement. Like
Okay, so
to the larger lore of Scooby Doo.
I
Like
have not
there's
watched a lot of Scooby Doo movies since. I mean, I backed out with the Curse of the 13th Ghost. I felt so betrayed by that movie in the fact of just like it turned one of my favorite Scooby Doo shows into like none of that really happened. It was just the lack of oxygen because they were in the Himalayas, which like doesn't make any sense because they travel around the world in that entire series. But like we're just supposed to believe that the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, yeah, it never happened. I kind of took a step back from Scooby-Doo movies, and prior to that, I was generally enjoying them. So then I come back in 2022 excited to watch Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo because of the fact that like I'm interested to see how they explore Velma's sexuality, and I'm interested in all this stuff. And then like the Scooby-Doo parts of the movie were super boring to me. And that was disappointing. But then I go back to the Gourmet Ghost and it's like, well, I know the mystery, but even though I know who's behind this, it was compelling how like information was giving. I liked the characters, like there were other characters. It wasn't just the Scooby-Doo gang. Like I don't know. Like
but your
so
issue that character development in this movie may not carry to other movies, that's never been a thing. Things happen in these movies all the time that never get brought up again in these other movies. So
right.
like that's just how these movies have worked. And the TV shows. The various TV shows have never jived with
Don't
one
really
another, and there
jive
was
with
like
them either.
dozens
Yeah.
of them. So like there is no larger lore. It's like trying to figure out like the lore to Legend of Zelda and trying to figure out where each game fits in. At some point you just have to admit that sometimes they just weren't meant to fit together. And you can criticize that, but like that's just the way that they've been made. So I think you're doing yourself a disservice by trying to find those things, I think is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get that. I understand. It's but also if it is supposed to be a satirical look at that, like that's not really where I was coming at it from. I thought that like this is the sincerity in the way that Scooby Doo movies have been presented as of late. And the
I mean,
only
the
other
second
one,
that they introduced a supervillain-esque character that was responsible for every ghost they had ever come up against by creating the suits herself, I was pretty much sure that they were going to be silly.
right? And that's I don't know. And then but then like that got followed by the whole montage of man, life sucks when there's no mysteries to solve.
Which was funny. I
Yeah.
found that funny. I laughed
I
a
just find
lot.
it sad. I find it tragic for these characters that I've been following for my entire life. And I know that's me. I know it's the way that I'm choosing to interpret it. But I don't know. Like even Shaggy and Scooby are like still
I mean,
afraid.
I don't
I
really want to
liked
get
their
into
trick or
I don't
treating
want to get into
joke.
like a
I
deep
liked that.
exploration of the concept of comedy, but like it is a dark comedy. Like it is making fun of this exact idea that like what are the Scooby-Doo gang without a mystery to solve? And the joke is not much. Like that's funny. Like that's
If
like if
that
that's
were the
not funny
whole
to you, that's
movie, I
fine.
would
But
be
like
okay with it. But then it's like, all right, we had that little soupçon of the dark comedy. Now
that
let's
is
go
the whole
back to the
movie.
silliness.
Fred like goes to a wishing well to wish for more, and then goes back to it at the end of the movie. Like that is present throughout the whole movie. What do you mean if it's in the whole movie?
I don't know. I feel like it's supplanted by just like silliness and Scooby Doo stuff. I never was frightened of the doppelganger ghosts in any way, shape, or form. Like it just felt, and like that whole story about reading it is just like this is clearly planted. Like the whole thing felt like an engineered Scooby Doo mystery, and then like that's what it is at the end. And I'm just like, this was not fun for me. Like you understanding your tropes and then like poking at him and like, huh, you see it, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I've always seen it. I don't like that you see it now. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's me. Maybe that's where I'm coming from. I don't know.
I don't know. I put it on the same level as something like a Shaun of the Dead. Like it really hit for me in a lot of those same ways of pulling at this this beloved genre of television because it really was a full genre. Because as you pointed out, it wasn't just the Scoobies that were doing this. Like you had like the Dune Buggy Gang and all that, and like you had the Groovy Ghost and all that shit, right?
The
Like you had
funky
other groups of
phantom.
kids, and the ways that these guys like the way that this movie just kind of like poked fun at all of that stuff that I just adored growing up. I loved and like and it clearly is not from a mean place because they clearly love it too because the set dressings and the references to moments and jokes about characters and all that show a love and care of this universe that only somebody who really enjoyed watching it, I think, could really stomach. Because I cannot imagine that they disliked Scooby Doo and still had the
The
capacity to go
references,
back and
yeah,
do the research that they did.
that's
So I
true.
mean, like, yes, it is a parody or a satire, but like much in the same way that Shaun of the Dead is, it also stands on its own as an exemplary part of the genre.
Hmm. I don't know. I liked when they were the Avengers at the end, where they all got super suits and they had to hunt down the convicts. Even though it felt like a tacked on set dressing at the end of it, I really liked Daphne as like her head being the one in the space ghost
Yeah, no,
costume.
the bit of
Like
each of
that
them
was
putting on
really cool.
the old villain costumes
Yeah, like that
was
was
really
awesome.
goofy.
And I would love like if that were like how they found it. Like, oh, there's no mystery to solve. There's a bunch of crime though. Let's be superheroes. I don't know. It was just disappointing stuff for me this week, and that kind of sucks leading up to Halloween. But then come to find out that like Halloween was already kind of over by the time it happened, and like maybe my love of Halloween was tied to my youth, and like I'm growing up. That's a whole other like kettle of fish, though, huh?
I don't know. We're gonna hand out candy and we're gonna put together some homemade costumes, so it's gonna be a super traditional Halloween here since I couldn't find any out. But we're gonna sit down and watch some old movies. We watched Young Frankenstein the other day by the fire, and that was really fun.
Yeah.
We've been trying to do some Halloween stuff because it feels like the rest of the world isn't. So we've been kind of combating it, I think, in the house to do what we can. Watch some over the garden wall, that sort of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the way to do it. It doesn't really feel like Halloween to me this year, and maybe that comes from the fact that I had other stuff going on in the month, so like I never really got to like let my freak flag fly and celebrate the holiday the way that I like to, and then also the fact that like the pandemic, like the thought of someone coming up to my house to like and giving them candy, like both sides of that is scary to me now, far
Yeah.
scarier than like a skeleton dancing in the cemetery.
Yeah, for sure. And that stuff is definitely worth talking about. So I think one of the things that we're doing in that regard, right, is we're going to be putting the bowl of candy out on the front porch, but we're still going to leave the door open because a kid is inevitably going to ring the doorbell. And we'll point out to them that the candy's outside and make sure that they don't like breathe all over us, but like we still want to be there because we don't want to like ruin a kid's night where he's like knocking on doors and not getting any answers.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I was excited to do our first official Halloween episode, but then like actually examining Halloween, I'm not. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm really enjoying pretending to be a Ghostbuster, and I thought that that boat had sailed for me. But that'll be a story for another time. I think.
Okay.
Well, I mean, have you gotten a chance to play it yet?
No, I have
Yeah.
not touched it because everywhere I go to get it, it's $60 out here. It's $40 online, so I could order it, and that might be what I end up having to do. But I just wanted to pick up a physical copy. But Walmart's out here selling it for $55.
That's incredible.
I couldn't believe it because if you look on their website, it says that it is available digitally through them for 40. I'm
Yeah.
just like, what? Yeah. Well, I think what it is I pointed out to you the other day that there is a collector's edition coming out at the end of the month. I think it's like November 1st is when it comes out, or maybe
It
even
might
on
be
the
even.
31st.
Yeah.
But so there's a collector's edition coming out that is going to be $60. And I think what's going on is I think the Walmarts out here have the physical copies and they're pricing it as if it's in that realm. And I don't know if they understand that what they're selling is not the same thing. Because I've definitely gotten I've gone the other way out here a couple of times. I don't like promoting this because I don't always love taking advantage of these, but it's kind of hard to say no when it's $20 cheaper. But I have gotten like Game of the Year versions that were supposed to be $99 at the $60 price because whoever was putting them out was not doing things right. Like, and so I've seen that messed up enough times that I could believe it's going in the other direction. But to that point, I'm not going to spend that money. And I'll be honest, in terms of physical video games out here, there's not many other places I can go shopping for physical copies of
There's
games.
not many places that anyone can go shopping. It's GameStop, which even then, like that was always the worst option for game stores because unless you pre-ordered it, you were getting an open game that they
Yeah.
still have the audacity to call new, right?
Yeah, I haven't really bought a game from GameStop in probably 5 years, honestly, now that I think about it. GameStop is the store I go into to look for stuff, never find what I want and walk back out. And I don't go in often because of exactly what you're talking about, where even if I do buy it new, it is still going to be probably used by one of the guys behind the counter.
GameStop, I really like their clearance deals because they buy a bunch of stuff that's never going to sell. I got a mechanical keyboard for $30. Like
Well,
a
yeah,
nice,
and that's the other thing about GameStop out here is that the majority of them actually have very, very small video game sections anymore.
yeah.
Everything is all of this sort of stuff: mechanical keyboards, pop figures, board games, T-shirts. Like, and I'm not, like I actually prefer it this way because my games I prefer getting digitally now anyway. I just wanted a physical copy of Ghostbusters because it's Ghostbusters.
No, I get it. I mean, I have a bunch of physical copies of the re-release, but I didn't even know there were it never even crossed my mind that this might have a physical release. Just based on the nature of it, the fact that it's a 4v1 online game, it felt like there's Ghostbuster games throughout my entire life as like an adult when like online downloading can happen have always kind of gone physical digital physical digital physical digital, and the last one was physical, so I kind of felt like this one was going to be digital only. And like by the very nature of it, the fact that it's an Epic Game Store exclusive, and that I thought that like finding a physical copy, like maybe there'd be a limited run eventually. I didn't think it would have an actual retail physical copy the way that it has. So that's something.
Yeah, I still haven't figured out what's supposed to be in the supposed collector's edition coming out.
Yeah, neither have I. Like I knew that there was a pre-order bonus that like unlocked Slimer for you, so you could use Slimer as a skin. But you get to level 20 as a ghost, you unlock Slimer. So it's not like completely locked behind that pre-order. It's just like acceleration unlocks. It's not like limited edition. You're only going to get it. I have no idea what they could unlock unless it's going to give you more cosmetic items from the beginning. But then, like, that's the only thing you're playing the game for is cosmetic
Yeah,
items. So you're
yeah.
taking away
Like I said,
part
I
of the
haven't looked into it,
game.
so I have no idea. I mean, I would imagine that the collector's edition is going to come with, I don't know, like maybe a book or something. Then, like if there's
I
not much
think
in
it
the
comes
game.
with a replica of Tobin's Spirit Guide, and then my thought process is it just going to be like a replica of the Tobin Spirit Guide that is on display in the game, or is it going to be the IDW Tobin Spirit Guide that they released like 10 years ago? Like where do we go with it? What is
Hmm.
what is the marketing going to be? It's strange. It's the world though, right? Especially with Ghostbusters and how they've always approached their collectors. I don't know.
Yeah, right. If there was ever a group of people that were willing to buy money in on nonsense sight unseen.
Yeah, it's a Ghostbuster fan. Ugh. 88 miles per hour studios. I still curse at you. All right, so I think I've said everything that I wanted to talk about Halloween related for this Halloween episode. Anything you'd like to add at the end?
For anybody that's just looking for some good hollow watching and is maybe turned off by the things that we talked about today, some ones that you could maybe enjoy instead is Disney and Warner Brothers have both put up so many good like um easy to find collections of the Halloween stuff. Like you don't have to go digging through like the years to find like the Halloween cartoons for Mickey because they've put a good collection of them together. And like I said, the same for Warner Brothers. If you go looking for the Looney Tunes stuff, they've got their hollow watching area on HBO Max too. And there's just so much good stuff in all of that, old and new. Like I have been so fascinated by some of the new stuff that they've done. Just some gorgeous artwork, especially on the Looney Tunes side. this year, because I always gush about some of the newer Disney stuff, but I want to give credit where credit's due this year. There's been some phenomenal art coming out of some of the new Looney Tunes stuff, and Halloween especially. There's a Halloween special up that has a name a mile long that I can't even
Bugs
begin to say.
Bunny's Howl O Scream, Skreem, spectacular, spooktacular,
Spectacular, spooktacular.
spooktacular, like
Yeah,
Dracula.
yeah.
I watched the first short of that with Daffy and Porky.
The freaking coffin.
They're like, but again, like I just watched some Scooby-Doo before, and I'm like, oh, it's a TV that's in this coffin, isn't it?
Why do you try and guess the end of everything when you start watching it? That must
That's
ruin so many things for you.
I'm the
Like,
plot
why?
whisperer, baby. It's like it sneaks over to me and it's like, do you want to know how this is gonna end? And I'm like, no, I'd really like just to enjoy it. All right, but like this is how it's gonna end, and I'm just like, why? Why did you tell
Also,
me that?
and again, I will point out a million times over is that the ending of a thing never dictates the
Oh
actual
yeah, because
meat
the
of the
final
thing.
joke at the end of it was really, really good. Like I really liked that. But that
But the
animation
but the
style.
but,
Oof, oof.
but the meat of that episode of Porky and Daffy running around with a coffin trying to bury
Oh
it in
yeah.
and all of the ghosts showing up was some of the darkest stuff I'd seen in a while until you get to some of the later cartoons in that very
Yeah, I
special.
wasn't able to finish it unfortunately because like we were having issues at the house, like with car alarms going off, and we didn't know what the problem there was. Which
There's a Porky Pig Sylvester one
oh,
where
I'll
they end
finish.
up
I intend to finish it. Like I,
yeah,
I, I
and that
enjoyed
one
it.
is pretty choice.
Yeah.
But no, the big one art wise for that is they put out a new Witch Hazel
Oh, and that one looked
cartoon.
gorgeous. I
Yeah, and it is
started it, and
yeah.
I'm just like, first of all, love Witch Hazel. How do you not love Witch Hazel? And then I'm like, this looks like good art because I really didn't love the art in the Porky and the Daffy thing. I don't know what it was. Like it just like felt too crisp to me. Like it didn't have like the humanity behind it. Like it was very obviously computer animated. If that makes sense.
Well, right, like hand
Yeah.
animated, but using a computer tablet
Yeah.
or something, right? Like that's the way that they do animation across the board now. Is
Right.
nobody's hand drawing everything,
Right. And that
unless they're making the deliberate choice to
Yeah.
nowadays.
And that makes sense. I understand that's how it's done now. I guess I haven't watched a lot of Looney Tunes where like that's it. I haven't watched a lot of the newer Looney Tunes stuff. So
Yeah,
it's kind
yeah,
of jarring to me to see it. Especially when you think about like Trick or Treat Scooby Doo is clearly drawn that way, right? They didn't go back and hand draw just to match the aesthetic of the first season of the show, but like it felt so nostalgic the way that they were animated.
right,
Even in
right.
something like the Gourmet Ghost. So then like Looney Tunes felt like such a departure from what animation was to me that it was a little distracting. As I will admit, like, oh, when they go into the mausoleum and they're like, oh, there's an open hole, and they shove the coffin in and it opens
Yeah,
the other one. Like there was
yeah,
some funny visual stuff in that.
yeah, yeah. There's a bunch of good bits in it.
Yeah,
Yeah. So just enjoy yourself with some of that stuff.
yeah, and Eat It Joe's that
Still
guy.
a dumb joke. Still like
It's always
it's
funny. It has never not been funny to me. So thank you, Looney Tunes, for Eat It Joe's. And I will say this: if we're talking about like collections, nobody's got Peacock, right? If you got Peacock, get on us on at the Say Report on Twitter because I'd like to meet the other people who are using the service with me because they did a great job putting together beautiful collections of all the Halloween episodes of the series. So like there's one stop shopping to watch through all the Brooklyn Nine-Nine Halloween episodes. And like you start it, it'll just go to the next one. And they did that with Roseanne, they did it with The Office, they did it with I think The Middle. Like all these shows that are like known for their Halloween episodes have these beautiful
Yeah,
collections.
the middle might be on Peacock as well because as we've talked about with Peacock, they seem to not give a shit about where other stuff is hosted. They'll still
Yeah.
hold on to it. But the middle is also up on HBO as well.
Yeah.
That's another good one to grab.
Yeah, I think that is. I'm trying to think of them. The ones that really spoke to me are Roseanne because it's weird that Roseanne is on Peacock, especially since it was always like an ABC series to me.
Yeah,
And then the
yeah,
fact that like anybody would even like touch it with like it's still weird watching the Connors because of like the oeuvre
everything.
that's
Yeah.
cast upon it. So, but those, I mean, say what you will about Roseanne, they did really good Halloween episodes. They were
No,
really
it's
good
it's almost
Halloween
like that show
episodes.
really had a point to it and something to say back before she completely
Lost her
lost all
mind.
sense of,
Yeah.
well, you know,
Yeah.
sense of self. Let's put it that way. A true understanding of where she came from. Roseanne Barr has not been the same since she got rich.
Right. Just like in the ninth season of the show.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that's it. So if you are a Peacock user, in addition to having pretty much all of the Universal monster movies available, because you know they're owned by Universal, you also have these beautiful collections of TV Halloween stuff. And it was great to like. I've always liked to watch the Brooklyn Nine-Nine Halloween stuff, but to actually get to just start with the first Halloween one and then it load up the next ones. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we should be doing, right? We should do more cultivation on these streaming platforms. And something like what Sejan's talking about on HBO Max and Hulu and Disney Plus, like to see that going everywhere and other people using it, I'm excited. Because that is going to be the next step in streaming is cultivation. So like it's one-stop shopping for
Well,
all
and
of one
remember,
thing.
Netflix kind of got slapped pretty hard on the wrist when they attempted to do this with stuff that was not their own. They
Yeah.
tried to put together things like Shuffle, and they kind of still have it a little bit with like I'm Feeling Lucky or whatever they call it, where you like press play and it just picks something for you, but it won't shuffle through everything. But they did at the time test out a playlist feature as well, where you could build your own, and they got hit real hard by people, and stuff got pulled because of those features. And it was like, so they backed away from it real quick. But now that it's the people that already own the stuff doing it, they're not in that danger, right? So hopefully we'll see some moves in that regard. Because yeah, like what's the point of having access to all of this stuff if certain things are going to get buried and nobody's ever going to see them, right?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, then I'm like scheduling my own TV, and I would love to do that. If I could put together a playlist and just know that, like, all right, tonight is going to be 2 episodes of Cheers, and then we're going to jump over to 2 episodes of Wings, and then we're going to do a Law and Order, and then an old late show with Johnny Carson. Like, that'd be excellent to
Yeah,
know,
I
like,
don't think Netflix ever truly got to the point where that was in public hands, but that was always the dream when they
yeah.
started doing some of that stuff back in the day, where you could put playlists together and shuffles and all that.
I mean, back when I was sailing the cyber seas and just downloading torrents of everything, my goal at the end of the day was like to build these gorgeous playlists. And then, like, that just, you know, it became, well, once we lost our internet connection the second time because of it, it felt like, well, I should stop doing this right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Tis life, though, Siegen. All right. So, if you would like to send a trick or treat to Siegen, he is available on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you want to send any more Halloween specials that you enjoy, that you want to give Dev some hope to make it through the next couple of days, find him at Devin D. Decker.
Yeah, right. Let me know, because I'll watch them. I'll watch any. Like I watched this other stuff, and it's just I don't know. I don't know how I'm feeling about Halloween. But welcome, we did it. Our first official Halloween episode. Thank you very much for listening, and Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.